It is a bit far-fetched, right? Since when is going to the immortal world as simple as drinking water or having a meal? It must be noted that no one had ascended to heaven in a long, long time. They found seats and sat down in doubt. The moment that they sat down, the big white deer went to the counter and came back with a dark purple round bowl dangling in its mouth. The newcomers stared at the big screen intently. This place looks, indeed, like the immortal world. On the big screen, the immortal essence and auspicious clouds floated around, and colorful lights flashed in the grand and beautiful palaces. It indeed looked celestial. While they watched, a special fragrance suddenly floated into their noses. They sniffed subconsciously, and Wang Xie turned his eyes toward the source of the scent. "Keep a calm and clear mind, watch carefully," the white-haired old man said. "Yes, Master." Wang Xie immediately sat straight and continued watching. Less than 10 seconds later, a yellow-clothed young master and a burly man in a shirt walked over and sat down beside the big white deer. "Little Bell, your master is not here today." They each had a bowl of instant noodles in their hands. "Ugh! What's this scent?" The black-robed deist of Heavenly Academy sniffed involuntarily, finding that the sour fragrance was even stronger. He glanced over subconsciously and saw that the 2 men and 1 deer each had a purple round bowl in their hands, and the intense fragrance. Gulp! Unconsciously, he swallowed his saliva. "Concentrate and ignore all distractions," the old man beside him reminded him. "Yes, Master." With a shiver, the black-robed deist immediately turned his head back and concentrated his attention on the big screen. At this moment, the 2 people on the big screen hadn't attacked yet, but their presences swept over the sky and the ground like tsunamis. Neither of them moved. Meanwhile, several cultivators walked over from the counter, each holding a purple round bowl and a paper cup with a big straw in it. They sat down on the other side of the 3 newcomers. The rich sour fragrance and intense milk fragrance floated into their noses alternatively. Then, a loli came over with 3 girls, each holding a bowl of instant noodles, and they sat down beside the big white deer. Zhongwu walked in with some guards. With more people coming into the lounge area, the intense fragrances filled the whole space. Wang Xie and the black-robed deist glanced over again subconsciously. Ahem! A slight cough came from the old man. With a shiver, the 2 guys looked back and watched the big screen with straight postures. Then, they heard the old voice say, "You 2, go and ask them what they are eating. We'll take some of those." In disbelief, they turned their heads and saw the white-haired old man taking in a deep breath of the fragrance, looking intoxicated. The 2 men were speechless. "Wow! The battle is beginning." With a bowl of instant noodles in his hands, the black-robed deist stared at the screen with bright eyes. Right now, Mr. Fang controlled Jingtian and launched an attack before his rival did, flying across the sky as a light beam. When his sword collided with the 2 blades in Chonglu's hands, the horrifying force spread out like a tsunami. With explosive earth-shaking noises, the immortal palaces around them collapsed in the blink of an eye. The first round of attacks between an immortal and a demon was so explosive that all the audience felt dizzy with thrills. Awesome! When can I be as powerful as this? The black-robed deist of the Heavenly Academy froze with the bowl of instant noodles in his hands. He said shakily, "Only immortals in heaven can unleash such power. He is a real immortal. Is this what the junior sisters and brothers have been talking about every day?" While swallowing a mouthful of instant noodles, Wang Xie said in a daze. After their weapons separated, chilly lights flashed in the ocean of clouds like shooting stars while they exchanged dozens of attacks in the blink of an eye. The sword energy and devil energy spread out in all directions, and they left deep cracks in the surrounding clouds and palaces. Excited, the players flooded the screen with bullet comments. They had been thrilled when they watched the great battle between Fei Peng and Chonglu in the opening animation of the game, and their blood boiled. Now, they realized that they could control the main character to fight the final battle with this unkillable demonic god. Only a battle of this scale could be called a battle, and it was worth it for the viewers to feel blood boil over it. Fighting with an ultimate master was the dream of each master. Even the ordinary cultivators without great talents also wished that they could reach the summit and have a thrilling battle. Now, the opponent was the unkillable lord of the demon world, Chonglu. He could control most people's life, death, age, and sickness, and he had mastered spatial powers. Since Jing Tian was technically still a human, Chonglu wouldn't unleash his full power in this battle. Instead, he only used a force within the range of human achievement. F***ck. Mr. Fang is fighting so fiercely. On the big screen, Fang Qi didn't show any disadvantage after controlling Jing Tian to battle with Chonglu for dozens of attacks. Then, his left hand turned, and a small bronze wine cup appeared in his palm. Light flashed on the small wine cup as if a tremendous amount of spiritual energy had been injected in it, and he tossed it out. With a huge noise, the wine cup exploded in front of Chonglu, and a great surge of flames that could cover heaven and earth instantly swallowed him. Nation-destroying silver bullet wave, someone exclaimed. The attack didn't end here. On the screen, Jing Tian withdrew his sword and cast a spell. After Fei Peng reincarnated as Jing Tian, he knew more than just sword techniques. Before the aftermath of the explosion disappeared from where Chonglu was standing, flames of extremely high temperature rose around Chonglu, shaking the sky and the earth. Shaking star and moving earth. Sky burning flame. Even Chonglu can't escape from these attacks unscathed, he is merciless. Watching a battle of such scale, all the audience felt a force surging through their veins. Then, they flooded the screen with bullet comments. However, a chilly light appeared in the depths of the thick smoke and the ocean of flames at this moment. Meanwhile, a streak of 8 trigrams spiritual light flashed around Mr. Fang. Mr. Fang was intact, and the chilly light turned around, instantly shooting toward Chonglu. What's that? The audience watched the scene in horror, wondering why it seemed like Chonglu attacked himself. Damn! Awesome! He used Smoky Moon Godly Mirror. This was a consumable type super spiritual treasure that Fang Qi obtained in the immortal world. The godly force attached to the mirror could bounce back the opponent's attack even though this attack came from Chonglu who, after all, only unleashed a force within a human's capabilities. They passed each other in a flash, and people saw a faint bloody scratch on Chonglu's cheek in the next moment. Chonglu was wounded first. The shop owner is unrivaled. Awesome! He wounded Chonglu first in this battle. What is the Smoky Moon Godly Mirror? What did the shop owner do? The black-robed deist, Wang Xie, and the old man hadn't played the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3. They just saw a flash of Tai Chi spiritual light around Jing Tian, and then an injury appeared on Chonglu's face after the two rivals passed each other. How come the shop owner is so powerful? The black-robed deist was shocked, wondering how someone could be so powerful that he could battle with a demon lord. At this moment, someone exclaimed, "Look! What is the shop owner eating?" When he passed Chonglu and got a moment to breathe, Mr. Fang took the opportunity to stuff an elixir pill into his mouth. Almost instantly, Jing Tian's various properties such as speed and cultivation strength rocketed. It looks like a godly fortune 4 openings pill. In the Zhuhua City shop, the sharp-eyed Nalan Minxu recognized the elixir. I saw only 2 such pills and obtained them in the immortal world at great costs. Song Qing Feng sent several bullet comments, the shop owner is taking drugs. Ruan Ning, boss is shameless. Mr. Fang ignored them. After taking the elixir pill, his strength skyrocketed, and his extremely sharp sword energies dashed toward Chonglu. That demon lord is being suppressed. Wang Xie said in astonishment, the shop owner's strength is so great. Yeah, the black-robed deist nodded repeatedly. You too, watch it carefully. Old Academy Master Gu Tingyun had a different opinion. This young man looks strong, but his strength mainly comes from the elixir pill, and he blocked his opponent's prior attack with a spiritual treasure. In contrast, This demon lord fights without using any outside assistance, and he is very steady. Master, you mean? Wang Xia watched carefully and found that his master was right. The shop owner's great strength is temporary. When the effects of the elixir pill pass, he will be at a disadvantage and could even be defeated. Gu Tingyun said with a nod, something like that. Really? Hearing his words, the people around them scratched their heads and continued to watch the live stream. The two rivals flew to the top of an immortal palace, and their sword and dual blades released many lightning bolts, almost instantly cutting the immortal palace beneath them into pieces. Mr. Fang slashed out the demon-suppressing sword with his right hand, and his left hand. You guys! Look at the shop owner's left hand. Mr. Fang splashed out a cloud of white mist silently with his left hand. Pu. The audience almost spat out whatever they were drinking or eating. He is even using sleep-inducing drugs. On the big screen, Chonglu froze for a second, and Jing Tian hacked down his sword mercilessly. Bone-melting pulp. Not an ordinary sleep-inducing drug, it was so powerful that even demons couldn't block its effects. Since Chonglu was in his human form instead of his demon form, he felt dizzy for a moment. The moment that he circulated his cultivation strength and dispersed this poisonous energy, the demon-suppressing sword was almost upon him. He not only took drugs himself, but he drugged Chonglu as well. The audience was stupefied. Then, they saw Mr. Fang tossing out a green bead with his left hand. The bead had a creepy green color, looking like the green eye of a poisonous viper. 5 poison bead. This wasn't the end. Then, Mr. Fang dug out a bead that was emitting a pure and holy light. Saint spiritual bead. His right hand drew a circle with the demon-suppressing sword, and many spiritual swords appeared in the sky behind Jing Tian, forming a horrifying curtain of swords. Innumerable sword scroll. Jing Tian doesn't know this technique, right? Mr. Fang knows it, someone exclaimed. Mr. Fang used the sword control technique and close-range sword technique with the demon-suppressing sword with his right hand and threw out all kinds of spiritual treasures with his left hand. The audience was at a loss for words while they watched the battle. Soon, Chonglu was forced into a disadvantage. Then, he yelled in fury, and his demon energy suddenly surged. He turned from his human form to his demon form. Although he still used a force within the range of human's limit, the power that he unleashed in his demon form was way greater than his human form. Tremendous, destructive demon energy gathered before his chest while the surrounding energy of nature swarmed toward him like waves of an ocean. The horrifying energy was compressed in front of his chest. The dark demon energy mingled with the energy of nature, forming a terrifying ball of energy with a white core and a purple surface. Then, the energy ball shot forward like a cannonball. The horrifying energy almost destroyed everything on its way. It was Mind Wave, an ultimate technique that Chonglu only used after changing into his demon form. The white burning energy ball exploded, and it instantly turned into many destructive white light beams while sweeping across the whole space. The powerful energy waves expanded and spread out while rippling, turning everything that they met into dust. The audience watched the scene in terror, finally having a glimpse of Demon Lord Chonglu's great strength at this moment. Even Jing Tian with his current cultivation strength might not be able to block this attack, not to mention mortals. At this moment, Mr. Fang took out a pale purple crystal from his pocket, it was emitting radiant lights. Buzz! With a strange vibration, an invisible force appeared in the area, and it hacked open the destructive waves, keeping Jing Tian intact. Fantasy Realm Crystal was a mysterious treasure not belonging to any of the 6 realms and could block any spiritual spells in a short period once it was activated. TL note: Buddhist cosmology typically identifies 6 realms of rebirth and existence: gods, immortal, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hells. It could only be used once, but Fang Qi used it at the perfect time. While controlling Jing Tian to fly forward with the sword control technique, Fang Qi took out another godly fortune 4 openings pill. Then, he took out another elixir pill and swallowed both. Zhu Dragon Internal Core, the audience howled and thought, how many treasures do you have in your pockets? After taking the pills, Fang Qi suddenly condensed a strange barrier around his body. Meanwhile, Jing Tian, under Mr. Fang's control, unleashed a streak of horrifying sword spirits. Chong Lu attacked Jing Tian with his dual blades. Resonant, bell-like noises swept all over the space. Mr. Fang was intact, but Fang Qi's sword already pierced Chong Lu's chest. The audience fell silent. On the big screen, Chong Lu's expression was as dark as the bottom of a pot that had been burned by fire. You win. The audience saw the wounded Chong Lu, and bullet comments flooded the screen. Condolence to Big Brother Chong Lu, you're a good guy, Mr. Fang, you win. Despicable and shameless old demon Fang. Mr. Fang said in disdain, do you want Sister Long Kui to come back to life or not? We do. We do. We do. Hurry up. Show us how Long Kui comes back to life. The bullet comments immediately changed tones. They had instantly forgotten about Chong Lu's little wound. Gu Tingyun's old face was dark. This shop owner, don't ever mess with him. If a powerful master had pride, one could still use this to their advantage and potentially win the battle. But to people like this guy, he was invincible. Is there no one who is going to praise my excellent plays? After winning the battle using all kinds of treasures and elixir pills, Mr. Fang didn't feel a trace of shame. Do you think it's easy to sneak attack a demon lord? If it was the original version of the game, Mr. Fang was confident that he could just barely defeat Chong Lu by using the level 1 demon suppressing sword. But now, there weren't that many mechanics that could be used in the virtual reality version, which meant that Fang Qi couldn't defeat this demon lord using the fancy moves as he did in Devil May Cry 3. After all, Dante had gained tremendous strength at the end of the Devil May Cry 3, and Mr. Fang had synchronized with Dante for a long time in the game Cultivation Room. In contrast, Jing Tian's current strength in The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 was way lower than that of Chong Lu's. However, people didn't care about this. After all, they were more interested in the fact that Long Kui, who had jumped into the sword furnace, could finally be resurrected. For Chong Lu, his small wound was no big deal. After bringing Long Kui back to life, he even separated Red Kui from Blue Kui, who had been one person with two personalities. In this way, Long Kui became two girls. The audience watched Jing Tian return to his life as the shop owner of Xian Pawn Shop. He put away and sealed his sword and lived a happy and free life. Xuejian became the mistress of the shop, Blue Kui was in charge of antique appraisals, and Red Kui's job was to scare customers. They lived happily as a family. Beginning from the battle in the new immortal world and ending with the battle in the new immortal world, all the reincarnations came to a happy ending. While the ending of The Legend of Sword and Fairy 1 was a sharp blade cutting into the players' hearts when they thought of it many years later, the ending of The Legend of Sword and Fairy 3 was a cup of fragrant tea where the taste would linger with them for a long time. On the big screen, many bullet comments expressed the audience's feelings. Ruan Ning, I'm touched. Nalan Mingxiu, compared with The Legend of Sword and Fairy 1, I like this one better. Lan Yan, I like both. Su Tianji, I like both as well. Not only the girls such as Su Zixin and Dong Qingli, but the guys such as Liang Shi and Song Qingfeng were so happy that they danced cheerfully. Long live Big Brother Chong Lu. I didn't know that Sister Long Kui could be resurrected. Excellent. I knew it. Inside the Yuanyang City shop, Zhongwu gulped down coke and slammed his hand on his thigh heartily, and he said while laughing. This girl Long Kui doesn't look like someone who would die so easily. She looks lucky. Since the young people from the Heavenly Academy were of similar age as the characters in the game, they were supposed to share the feelings of the characters who had experienced so many ups and downs until the happy ending was reached. In the real world, these young people had just begun their journey, setting sail on their ships on the ocean that was called life. However, most of them remained silent at this moment. So good. One of the young people sent this short bullet comment. It contained only 2 words but held a deeper meaning. Meanwhile, the newcomers, Wang Xiat, the black-robed deist, and old academy master Gu Tingyu, exchanged a look of bafflement, wondering about the story leading to the final battle. Who can tell us the story? It's Senior Gu. Many people had been watching the live stream intently and didn't see him. When Zhongwu and the others saw him and came over to greet him, the others were startled. After all, not just anyone could have the opportunity to see him. Otherwise, the people would have swarmed to the Heavenly Academy to ask him to calculate some answers for them, and the threshold of the main gate of the Heavenly Academy would have been destroyed. Gu Tingyun immediately stood up to return the greetings. I'm here for a leisure outing. I'm surprised to see so many of you here. Zhongwu and the others smiled in embarrassment. Senior Gu, did you just say that you want to know the story of the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3? The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3? Story? Gu Tingyun was puzzled. What story? Gu Tingyun pointed at the big screen. I want to know how the shop owner could battle the demon lord and resurrect people. Who the heck is the shop owner? He's so powerful that he can even battle a demon lord. Zhongwu's face twitched. This was a big misunderstanding. Immediately, he explained the game to the newcomers and took them to the computers to experience the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 in person. 3 minutes later, it only took 3 minutes for them to fall in love with this new game. Green light lit up in their eyes while they asked, "Do you mean that we can also battle Demon Lord Chonglu when we play to the end of the game?" It was awesome enough to watch someone else battle, and now they realized that they could do the same and battle this powerful master. Although it was only a game, the experience was almost the same as in the real world. Even Gu Tingyun, an old man who was enjoying the last few years of his life, wished that he could pass the game and experience the battle with the Demon Lord. Ugh! This, Zhongwu was embarrassed, thinking that they had a long way to go before they could reach the end, and they should take it slow. However, Mr. Fang's battle with Chonglu gave them some inspiration. So long as they had the right strategies, accumulated enough experience and skills, and obtained precious treasures in the game, they also had a chance to pass the game even if their cultivation strengths were not high. In Zhuhua City, people like Nalan Mingxiu, Song Qingfeng, and Su Tianji who had played the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1 with proficiency had no difficulty playing the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, some of them had reached the second half of the game. As for the cultivators in Yuanyang City, most of them were still playing the first half of the game, reaching the middle point. As for the new players such as Gu Tingyun, Wang Xiat and the black-robed deist Zhou Mo, they were still being reprimanded by Ms. Tang. This girl is so unruly. How dare she beat me? Zhou Mo jumped up in rage. In the game, Jing Tian who hadn't learned any martial arts received another beating before he could attempt to fight back. He turned his head. Master, how did you pass this part? Gu Tingyu looked calm. As a Buddhistic player, since he couldn't fight back, he just covered his head and received the beating calmly. TL note, Buddhistic is a popular internet slang in China. It is used to describe people who are calm and reserved at all time. It seemed like they had a long way to go before they could challenge Chonglu. However, many people wanted to clear the stage with better performances and achieve an ending that they liked. Others enjoyed the feelings of growing from weak to strong and achieving breakthroughs in battles. Therefore, a large portion of the players played this game again. In the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1, the players could still do tasks after passing the game. For example, Li Xiaoao could still finish the task that Sword Saint assigned to him and become the master of the Shu Mountain faction. After that, the players could continue the game by managing the affairs in the faction. However, in the system version of the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, it was different. After the perfect ending, Jing Tian put away and sealed his sword. Although the players could still experience the happy life in Xin and Pawn Shop, some players who sought after thrills would find it more fun to play the game again from the very beginning. Despite the high degree of freedom in the system version of the game, it couldn't let the players continue playing the game after the end of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 until the side chapter of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, which was another game, was unlocked. Likewise, the players couldn't play for another 80 to 100 years until they enter the game of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1 and The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 2. Such a thing wouldn't happen. Unlike Devil May Cry, which was perfect for warriors to play, the characters in the series of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy could cultivate either sword techniques or spiritual spells. In The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1, players could focus on the sword control technique, or they could resort to plain attacks using Tiangang Battle Qi, or they could learn all the spiritual spells. In The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, the players could control Jing Tian to cultivate spiritual spells while warriors could control him to practice sword techniques. They could even move Li Xiaoao's sword control technique from The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1 to here to continue practicing. Of course, the sword control technique was Su Changqing's strong suit while Jing Tian didn't show any great talent in this technique. Zhang Xiaoyu sat together with 4 others while playing the game in the internet cafe. Right now, people could see that Yu Bai held a demon sword and killed her way into Thunderclap Hall with the main characters without using any spiritual spells. Beside them, the big white deer was chased by disciples of Thunderclap Hall while casting the ice spell. It yelled in tears, "This game is so difficult to play. Why doesn't Jing Tian have 4 legs? They will catch me soon." While it yelled, its screen turned grey. "Little Belle, you are so dumb." Zhang Xiaoyu glanced at the deer and said, "Watch me." Although Zhang Xiaoyu had lost several days of playtime due to the academy exam, her progress in the game was quite fast. By now, she had reached the part where she had to rescue Xianjian from the Ghost Realm. Right now, she was walking on Yellow Spring Road which led to hell, but she showed no fear in this gloomy place. 2 small ghosts floated toward her. On the screen, Zhang Xiaoyu's plays were so fast that the people watching could only see a blur. This is called kiting. On the screen, Zhang Xiaoyu controlled Jing Tian to toss out a long-range spiritual spell. Attack while running. This is called sidestepping. When the 2 small ghosts rushed up, Jing Tian calmly dodged their attacks. Then, he tossed a spiritual spell and hit a ghost that missed the target. This is called prediction. After a series of plays, the few small ghosts vanished with screams before they could touch his clothes. The other players glanced over and yelled, "Amazing! How did you do that?" The big white deer said, "Princess Xiaoyu, you're awesome. Can you teach me?" Zhang Xiaoyu snickered, "He he he." While the players were in different stages in the game, with some close to the end while others were at the beginning, it didn't stop them from discussing the game. "I tried the lightning style and fire style spiritual spells today. Just what happened after I increased its level to level 3? A voice came from outside the shop before the people in the shop could see this person through the windows. The voice came from Tang Yu, and he was waving a folding fan made of black jade. Beside him was Wang Xia, a white-clothed handsome young man who looked scholarly and elegant. He said with a chuckle, "Brother Tang, you found something new." "More than that," Tang Yu said, "I've made that spell called Shooting Star Level 3, and my lightning style spell, Sky-Piercing Heavenly Lightning also reached level 3. Once, I used both spiritual spells at the same time by accident, and they formed a mixed spiritual spell called Lightning Igniting Burning Flames." Indeed. Wang Xia was also a cultivator who chose to focus on spiritual spells, but he chose a different direction compared to Tang Yu. He cultivated the wind style and water style spells. Can these spiritual spells really mix with each other? How powerful is the new spell? The power more than doubled. Tang Yu said proudly, "I'll show you in the game." "Excellent! Excellent!" Wang Xia said, "If this method proves useful, I'll buy you a bowl of instant noodles." Ugh! Look! Junior sister Xiaoyu is here. That is. Senior sister Yu Bai? They are all playing The Legend of Sword and Fairy 3. Zhang Xiaoyu was reading messages in the group chat in QQ. In the Legend of Sword and Fairy communicate group, Zhang Xiaoyu asked, "Who knows how to get through Yellow Spring Road? I'm lost." "Lan Yan, ask your sister Mingxiu. She has all the detailed maps before the immortal world." Zhang Xiaoyu was surprised. "How come you guys have such things?" Nalan Mingxiu, smirking face, "I paid people to scout out the areas and drew the maps. Do you want them? I'll give them to you if you call me good big sister." Zhang Xiaoyu, flushed face Su Tianji, smiling face with open mouth and cold sweat. "Lan Yan, we also have the mixing conditions for several mixed spiritual spells." Smirking face. Song Qing Feng didn't hesitate, "Good big sister, please give me one copy of that." Watching from behind, Tang Yu and Wang Xie were dazed. Who are they? They even have all the maps leading to the immortal world. After all, they had just begun playing the game. They have detailed maps. Instantly, several people turned their heads to this direction. It must be noted that there were many places like Thunderclap Hall in The Legend of Sword and Fairy 3. To defend against invaders, these places were huge and maze-like, and the players got lost easily if they didn't pay close attention. Wu Zong asked, "Where is it?" Wang Xie replied, "It's in their group chat on QQ." Black-robed Daoist Zhou Mo asked, "Can we join this group chat?" Meanwhile, Mr. Fang saw that the messages in the group chat on QQ jumping like crazy, and the number on the top right corner of this group chat icon soon reached 999+. Mr. Fang suddenly got a prompt from the system. The messages in the various group chats in QQ reached the limit several times. Post Bar Forum is now unlocked. TL note, Post Bar Forum is an internet product created by the Chinese company, Baidu. Just think of it as Reddit. Since it was unlocked by the system, it appeared on the desktop directly. In contrast, the Matrix was a prize drawn by Fang Qi, and he could choose when to release it. For the customers in the old shops, they would understand the movie. But for the customers in the new shop, they didn't have the slightest idea about internet, and the only reason that they came to the shop was to play The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3. Since these people had no idea, if he released the Matrix now, they wouldn't be as excited and inclined to purchase it. Therefore, Mr. Fang decided to wait for a while before releasing the Matrix. At least the new customers would have to have a basic idea about virtual reality, computers and machines, etc. Many new players played the game by themselves and talked about it in their small circles. They knew nothing about QQ or Xone. They also didn't know that in the distant place beyond the heavenly abyss sea, another group of cultivators was also playing this game. When they encountered problems while playing the game, they only discussed about it in their small circles. However, things changed after the appearance of Post Bar Forum. At this moment, Mr. Fang created a post bar named The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3. At this moment, Mr. Fang saw a profile photo jump in QQ. Su Tianji, Husky's dumb cute face, "How come I found another new item? Are you watching out for new items each day?" Mr. Fang was exasperated. "You saw it the moment it appeared. What's this for?" "I saw nothing when I clicked it open, Mr. Fang." However, as the owner of the shop, he was the only one who knew how to use this thing. Soon, Mr. Fang replied after a series of operations, "Now, enter it again." Su Tianji entered The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 post bar. Sure enough, she saw 2 posts inside. Discussion: The plausibility of merging 5 elemental spiritual spells guide, how to obtain the Fantasy Realm Crystal. Fantasy Realm Crystal. In the Zhuhua City shop, Su Tianji's eyes widened as she held a cup of milk tea in her hands. She exclaimed after a moment of stupefaction, "The shop owner released the method of getting the Fantasy Realm Crystal." Different from the original version, in the system version, there were very few treasures that could block spells from Chonglu. Different from the group chats, the post-bar forum had no restriction circles for participants, and anyone could discuss all topics regarding a game or a movie. Soon, a large group of people replied to the posts. New players asked questions in the post-bar while new guides and discussion posts appeared. The Legend of the Sword and Fairy communication group is recruiting new members. The QQ group number is. Several days later, this post appeared in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 post bar. At this moment, Mr. Fang glanced at the activation number of the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3 and found that it had surpassed 3,000. I'm going to battle Chonglu now. Nalan Mingxiu posted a screenshot in the group, showing that she was on the way to the new immortal world. How come you guys are so fast? Wang Xie froze when he entered the group chat. How come you're so fast? Huang Putao with the ID Black Dragon Castellan posted a message, I play 8 hours a day but only reached the Evil Sword Immortal. By the way, the Evil Sword Immortal is so powerful, I'll post a guide after passing Mr. Fang, it sounds like a farewell. Song Qing Feng, he is not replying, I guess the battle has begun. 1 hour later Nalan Mingxiu, Husky's pitiable face, I was beaten senseless, Zhang Xiaoyu, I haven't got there yet. Song Qing Feng, brother Chonglu is so powerful. I guess I'll lose to him tomorrow too. Black-robed Daoist Zhou Mo's profile photo was a picture of Chonglu. After all, he is the demon lord. While the people in the half-city shop and Zhuhua city shop had gotten to know each other through battles, the relationship between the new shop and the old shops was much friendlier as they were all playing The Legend of Sword and Fairy 3. There was less competition. Instead, the cultivators discussed with each other in the group chats and forums as if they were studying Dao together in a peaceful atmosphere. One day, Mr. Fang finally added a new movie on the small blackboard, The Matrix. The spiritual state's climate was even milder when compared to Zhuhua City in the deserted sea realm. It was well into the spring. Even though Yuanyang City was built on the top of a spiritual mountain, it wasn't cold. Meanwhile, a big demon still stayed in Half City, the coldest of the 3 shops. Achoo! When will that damn old demon Fang take me to the new shop? Mr. Fang had no such intention at all. The disciples of the Heavenly Academy came to the shop whenever the elders didn't hold lectures. The elders of the Heavenly Academy didn't have lectures each day. For the geniuses, self-cultivation was more important since the masters only acted as guides. It was why the disciples of the Heavenly Academy had lots of free time. Some even went out for a long time to experience the world or seek adventures. Sister Lanruo, I can do it. Li Lanruo prepared instant noodles and milk tea for her good friends in school while she was preparing her own snacks. The Li family had few members left in the world, and she was the most talented one in the family, which was why elder Li Wuya and little Xiner hoped that she could put all her energy on cultivation. However, she would help them out in the shop since she came to the shop every day. Boss, how come the main item isn't The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3? While walking past the counter, Li Lanruo saw that the first item on the small blackboard changed to a movie with the weird name The Matrix. She knew what movies were since she had watched Shu Mountain at Zhang Xiaoyu's recommendation. Zhongwu came to the shop whenever he had time, so it was up to how much affairs he had every day. Today, he wasn't in the shop yet, which meant that he was busy. However, people who were not busy walked into the shop. Master, be careful. Wang Xie helped old academy master Gu Tingyu into the shop. Gu Tingyun had retired from the position of academy master long ago. Right now, during the last years of his life, his only job was teaching disciples. Wang Xie's only job right now was studying the Heavenly Insight Scroll. But since his master even came here to play games, he didn't need to study at all. The master and disciple were the earliest customers in the shop almost every day. What are they doing standing around the counter? Gu Tingyun narrowed his old eyes. Then, he heard Zhang Xiaoyu asking in her crisp voice, Boss, are you going to watch The Matrix? Of course. Why not? Then, I'll watch it too. Anyway, it was always right to follow the shop owner. The Matrix. Wang Xie and Gu Tingyun exchanged a look. What's this? Upon entering the shop, Li Haoran froze when he saw the new movie that was offered. Others might not understand this word, but as the genius artifact master in Dajin, he clearly knew how they easily won the information war against the alliance of major forces. They had borrowed the idea and strategy from the hacker Lester in Grand Theft Auto 5. Perhaps the strategy was a bit crude and in its infancy, but it was effective against the major forces who had never imagined such a strategy before. Is this a movie featuring hackers? Li Haoran was a bit curious. Although they had achieved success by using this strategy, what was the use of watching hackers? How could that be applied in the real world? Could they use the skills learned in the movie to hack into the computers in the internet cafe? It was a bit far-fetched and non-realistic. Then, he glanced at the price and found that it was quite expensive, 38 crystals. He could afford this price, but he wondered why this movie was as expensive as Shu Mountain. For the cultivators, the science technology of the ordinary people was child's play compared with the top-level spiritual treasures in Shu Mountain and the legend of the sword and fairy. In the half-city shop. How come they are all standing here? Unbound King was a young man with shoulder-length white hair. He looked to be about 18 years old. Behind him was a purple-clothed old man, the Reincarnation King of Half City. The Reincarnation King had originally been scheming against the internet cafe, but the old man was smart enough to stop his plans after the big demon was suppressed. Now, he came into the internet cafe every day to play games. Upon entering the shop, they saw elders and disciples of the Nanhua faction standing around the counter. Mo Xian said, "The shop released a new movie today, and we're deciding if we should watch it together." Yu Yan wondered, "The Matrix? After watching it, can we dump Lester and hack into the security system ourselves to do all kinds of tasks?" Lu Ningyun asked, "Ms. Ruan, do you guys plan to watch it?" "I will if the guild president watches it," Ruan Ning said. "This old demon never misses a good thing." Mo Xian said in disdain. "It's a good thing for him if we watch it since he can make money from us." The Zika spiritual master said, "Is it about hackers? Let's get online first and ask the cultivators in Zhuhua City in the group chat." Mo Xian replied, "I have a feeling that it's no good." After staying in the world of Grand Theft Auto 5 for a while, they found that this world had nothing good except for some excellent spiritual artifacts. Even though those machines and tools were good, the top-level cultivators could still deal with these heavy machines as long as they understood their mechanisms and the principles behind them. Unbound King and Reincarnation King exchanged a look. "What's this thing? Should we watch it?" Usually Mr. Fang's group tour in QQ was quiet, but whenever a new movie was released, many people would jump out and flood the chat with messages. "Su Tianji, sir, are you going to organize a group tour today?" "Nalan Hung Guyu, this doesn't look like a movie for warriors, eh? Should I watch it?" "Mr. Fang, it's your decision, it only lasts a bit over 2 hours. Get on board if you want to watch it." "Su Tianji, me. Dong Qingli, me. 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 And Huawei, count me in." Messages flooded the group chat and QQ in the half-city shop. Mo Xian urged, "Let's go now. Hurry up and get on board." Lu Ningyun was nonplussed. "Senior sister, didn't you say that it wouldn't be good?" Mo Xian replied, "Don't you see that they've all gone? If we don't hurry, there won't be seats available." Yu Yan shouted, "Hurry! Hurry! In the Yuan Yang shop what are they doing? So many people! Shall we go and watch it too?" Tang Yu said, "What's happening? Let's go and have a look." Instantly, a large group of people showed up in Mr. Fang's zone. "Didn't you say that you wouldn't watch it? How come you're all here?" Fang Qi glanced around and saw the old man Gu Tingyun and elder Yu, wondering how they got into this group. While his face twitched, Mr. Fang said, "The tour bus is full, please wait for the next bus." The customers who hadn't gotten onto the tour bus were silent for a while. Then, Black Demon asked, "Anyone wants to get on board my tour bus of the Matrix?" "Me. Count me in." Nearby, the Reincarnation King and Unbound King had just gotten online. "How come they all went to watch the movie? Shall we watch it too?" With a clank, the access to Mr. Fang's zone was closed, and Mr. Fang's tour bus set off. It was pitch black. When the light came, they saw dense rows of data flowing on the pitch-black screen in a complicated manner. Fortunately, the system had the translation function, which enabled the audience to see that it was online communication between two hackers. "It looks powerful," Wang Xie whispered. "I wonder if it's better than The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, Tang Yu whispered since he knew only one game. The environment around them looked modern, and the buildings were in the style of the end of the 20th century. In a dim and crude room, a female hacker sat inside while police officers swarmed up to the door. "Senior sister, these guys are so weirdly dressed," Mu Qing whispered. Both of them had come to watch the movie with Zhang Xiaoyu. The cultivators of the Yuanyang City shop didn't know what they were watching except that it was similar to the opening animation of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, so they watched for fun. Having played Grand Theft Auto 5, Mo Xian and the others were familiar with this concept. She said with some disdain, "What good is this? Catching a hacker? It would be more fun to drive a car and lead them on a wild chase." The others were also a bit disappointed. For them, modern society was full of people with low-level strengths. After all, the Wu Daoist Alliance had mastered the creation of items such as guns, and it seemed meaningless to watch a movie with a similar theme. It wasn't exactly meaningless, it was just that its theme overlapped with that of Grand Theft Auto 5. The cultivators of Yuanyang City also felt that the spiritual artifacts and martial art techniques shown in this move were child's play. "This is not nearly as good as The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, Zhongwu said. "Senior Gu, what do you think?" Gu Tingyun nodded. "Indeed, it doesn't seem as good." Elder Yu said, "I can deal with 100 or 1000 people who are on this strength level. They are indeed lame. Is it a mistake that we came to watch it? This thing looks to be in the same category as the shop owner's race car." Curious, Tang Yu walked up and stared at the truck. Boom! As a loud noise sounded, it seemed like the telephone booth was shattered with the heroine in it. The headlights of the truck shone on the shattered telephone booth. "She's not in there." At this moment, the dozens of viewers stood on the opposite side of the street with Mr. Fang, staring at the destroyed telephone booth. There wasn't a trace of the woman, it looked as if the truck had crashed into a ghost. "Boss! Are you sure this isn't Silent Hill?" Lowly Zhang Xiaoyu moved closer to Mr. Fang subconsciously. A big white deer raced to her. "Princess, Your Highness, there is a monster." Then, a smirking face emoji floated over. "Strange. How come a little demon dares to venture out?" 3 agents got out from the truck. Agent Smith seemed to have anticipated this situation. She got off. All the people froze. How did she do it? Even hackers have to follow the basic laws of nature when escaping, right? Did she flee through the internet cable? Master. Gu Tingyun looked grim. "I can't tell how she left." Puzzled, the audience continued watching. There are such people in this world. Wang Xie watched the scenes dubiously. "Brother Wang, where do you think this place is?" While wearing crude clothes, Tang Yu had a black folding fan painted with golden bamboo leaves. He had bought it after growing vegetables for several days, and the fan looked quite fancy with its top-grade material. As for clothes, he had run out of money. The story of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 was set in the immortal world and mortal world, and the viewers were familiar about it. However, the clothes and weapons in this movie were quite novel for them. When the customers of the Yuanyang City shop glanced at the customers from other shops, they found that one wore Kyokyuzanaga's costume, one wore a sorcerer's cloak, and one wore a Daoist robe from an unknown faction. In fact, there was even a smirking face emoji floating in the air. There were all kinds of people wearing all kinds of clothes. For the customers of the Yuanyang City shop, most of them had never seen the style of living shown in the movie. It seemed to be a totally different civilization from theirs. As the camera turned, they arrived at Neo's home. Neo was the main character. The following scene was even odder. When Neo woke up, the computer blacked out and then showed the words, "Wake up, Neo. The Matrix has you. Follow the White Rabbit." 3 strange, choppy, and puzzling messages appeared. As the story went on, things got even weirder. At first, the hacker Morpheus directed Neo through the phone to escape from the chasing agents in the big office. Morpheus even knew the exact moment when the agents had their backs to Neo. Easily, he helped Neo dodge the agents and get out of the office. He was just beside the agents, but the latter couldn't see him because he was in their blind spots, so they didn't discover everything. All of this was because someone directed his moves from a distance. Some people in the audience had played Grand Theft Auto 5, and they did the Fleeca bank job. They felt like this scene was like when Lester used his own little software to avoid the bank's defense software and hacked into its security system. The audience watched while Neo failed in his escape and was apprehended by the agents. Having watched some modern movies and games, the audience from the Zhuhua City and the Half City expected that Neo would be interrogated by the agents. Neo even gave the agents the finger and said that he would call a lawyer. Without a word, the agent glued Neo's lips, making him into a mouthless man. Meanwhile, a strange electronic device turned into an electronic worm and entered Neo's belly. The audience felt weirder, and their expressions became strange. Even the people who knew the meaning of the word hacker began to realize this wasn't a movie about ordinary hackers. This world looks like that in Grand Theft Auto 5, but they are not the same, right? Li Haoran said in surprise. The technology shown in Resident Evil and Grand Theft Auto 5 was not complicated, and it was not difficult for them to understand and master. While watching the movie, Song Qingfeng said in a low voice, "If the police in GTA 5 are as powerful as the agents in this movie, we wouldn't be able to do any jobs." Wang Xie said, "They seem to know things that we don't." Tang Yu said in a low voice, "The cars driven in the movie have the same mechanisms as the shop owner's race car. He might have gotten the technology from these people in the movie." The people from Yuanyang City whispered among themselves. "Look! They found Morpheus." Morpheus was a tall bald guy wearing a black leather coat and sunglasses. He was the leader of the hackers and the person who had helped Neo. The audience felt that he might explain all the mysteries that they had witnessed. What the heck is going on? Su Tianji watched in bafflement as the two people talked. It looks like the world in Grand Theft Auto 5, but it's much weirder. I have the same feeling, Dong Qingli said. Each time when something happens, he would wake up in his bed, but the things he dreams about are real, even the electronic worm is, Nalan Hongyu said. In my opinion, there's a mastermind behind all this. An Huey said with a nod, it must be the so-called Matrix. They stood there and continued watching. While they talked, Neo swallowed the red pill. Morpheus and others helped him attach all kinds of devices to his body. It seemed like the truth would come out in the next moment. Wang Xie watched the scene curiously. Other disciples from the Heavenly Academy also stared at Neo intently while his body was engulfed by liquid metallic material. What will happen? Yu Bai, Li Lanruo, and the other girls all stared at the scene. Is this a fantasy realm? Demonic woman Ning Bai guessed uneasily. Impossible. Everything is real here. Everyone stared at Neo without blinking, not wanting to miss any detail. The movie continued. It's going into replication. Tank, we're going to need a signal soon. Located. Targeting, almost there. A series of electronic beeping sounds came. He's going into arrest. Lock. I got him. Among horrified exclamations, a high-tech tank filled with red liquid appeared. In it was a man who had tubes attached to his spine, the back of his head, and other places on his body. Looking out from the water tank, the man saw rows and rows of neatly placed high-tech tanks. He turned to look forward and saw two huge pillars reaching up into the sky. On the pillars were densely placed high-tech tanks that looked like warm eggs. Looking down, he saw a bottomless abyss with many jumping electrical currents. Looking up, he saw a seemingly limitless number of pillars with high-tech tanks on them, and his high-tech tank was one of the many. What? What are these? Seeing this scene, even the grand cultivators such as Zhongwu in Yuanyang City were shocked. More importantly, they should be in the room with Morpheus and the other hackers, right? Could it be that it really was just a dream? What are these cocoon-like high-tech tanks? The big white deer's legs turned to jelly, and it dropped to the ground with tears. So scary. Some cultivators from Yuanyang City stepped back subconsciously. Sir, what the heck are these things? Su Tianji also looked alarmed. Isn't it supposed to be a world like that in Grand Theft Auto 5? How come it suddenly changed into this world? Her two disciples hugged each other and shrieked in fear. Even the fearless demon woman was surprised, and her expression changed. Is this the truth? Even Nalan Hongyu looked astonished. Master, what is this? Wang Xia backed off subconsciously while glancing at Gu Tingyun beside him. Humans' fear came from the unknown. However, sometimes the truth was even more horrifying than the unknown. Only the non-human creatures in here could be compared to Gu Tingyun's age and experience, and his cultivation strength was almost unrivaled. However, at this moment, his old face had changed color as well. What are these damn things? I don't like this feeling. The big demon floated back to the middle of the crowd from the foremost position. Then, all the tubes were removed from Neo's body, and he slid down from the high-tech tank before being picked up. Welcome, to the real world. In the aircraft, Morpheus and the others wore crude sweaters, looking like refugees from a disaster. He looked totally different from his previous image, where he wore a pair of sunglasses and a black coat. Inside the aircraft were antique-looking machines. The audience glanced around the real world and watched the people in the aircraft help Neo recover his bodily functions. The audience looked alarmed and shocked when they saw the plug holes all over Neo's body. They felt fearful about the unknown and dreaded the truth at the same time. They had vague yet strong anticipation, waiting for the people in the movie to explain the scenes they had seen. What is truth? What is real? They watched the recovered Neo enter the previous world again. With a tube connecting the plug in the back of his head, he relaxed and then found that he was suddenly inside a pure white world. A virtual reality world. Right now we're inside a computer program. Is it really so hard to believe? In the movie, Morpheus explained, what is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. All the cultivators watched their conversation dumbfoundedly. Is this the so-called real? Is it just signals interpreted by the body? It was ridiculously simple, but no one could laugh at this moment. I'm surprised that it's so easy to turn fantasy into reality. The virtual reality world in the movie was horrifying to them. The so-called signals could completely keep people's awareness in the virtual reality world. Perhaps in their eyes, a human body was no different from an advanced and complicated spiritual artifact. The conversation between the two continued. This is the world as it was at the end of the 20th century. Morpheus turned on the TV which showed the scenes of their former world. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. We have only bits and pieces of information, but what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI. A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. AI. Many cultivators from Yuanyang City looked puzzled. AI. Artificial intelligence. Some people saw such a thing in Resident Evil. Red Queen. Red Queen? What's that? Zhongwu asked curiously, what is artificial intelligence? Obviously, the customers in the new shop couldn't understand this term. However, the customers from the old shops were different since they had encountered this world in the movie Resident Evil and the game Grand Theft Auto 5. People who don't understand AI can go and watch the movie Resident Evil, Lan Mo said. It is an intelligence created by humans, it is something like artifact spirits. The calculation ability beyond humans' imagination and the intelligence controlling everything like a shadow were still nightmarish for many players of Resident Evil. This was the horrifying and accurate production process of humans by the machines. This was the truth that the audience had been looking for. This was the bioenergy that the machines invented. The movie presented to the audience endless machine fields and mountain-like human growing machines that had intelligence. These scenes swept over the mind of the audience like surging waves in a tsunami. The truth was so horrifying. Some people had remained calm before this scene, but now even the grandmasters with extremely high cultivation strengths looked scared and twisted. Soon, a group of girls shrieked in fear. Perhaps nothing in the world was more shocking than these scenes for them. Fortunately, they watched it on the TV, and they were separated from the scenes by the TV screen. Despite this, the big white deer still dropped to the ground, covering its eyes with hooves. Occasionally, it peeked from between its hooves, looking curious and scared at the same time. Does it mean, Tang Yu said in shock, they put intelligence into the machines that they made, and then they were enslaved by these machines? The machines created a virtual reality world to enslave humans. It was like the cultivators giving their spiritual artifacts intelligence, and the latter enslaved the cultivators. However, these spiritual artifacts were much more advanced than their spiritual treasures born with spirituality. The intelligence that they possessed was so horrifying that they could create a whole virtual reality world. In other words, the humans used the knowledge named technology to create a god. Even if it wasn't a god, it was a demigod. At this moment, this movie had brought them a totally different sensation. Some people such as Mo Xian were even worried if they were living in a virtual reality world but were sleeping in high-tech tanks in reality as the people shown in the movie. Of course, this wasn't possible. What will happen then? The people who had followed the trend to watch the movie and weren't that interested were now completely enthralled by it. It wasn't just novel. It was beyond that. It ventured into the conversation of humanity and worldviews. It was just a story. Even if it were just a story, it showed them a perspective that they had never heard or imagined before. Even if they couldn't obtain any benefits from this costly movie, they would all continue watching it at this point. It is superb. Many people exclaimed silently. It is amazing. At this moment, most people hadn't recovered from the shock that the previous scenes gave them. When the characters came to the real world, the plot began to settle down a bit. Gradually, some weird ideas started to grow in their minds. The people in the movie live in a virtual reality world and thought that it is the real world. What about us? What about our world? These thoughts washed over their minds. They felt as if their whole worldviews were about to collapse. Will we one day find ourselves lying in such things? Mo Xian asked fearfully. Bedlam broke out after she said that. The people around her began to talk animatedly among themselves. We have lived many years and take the reincarnations and immortal ascendants as laws of nature that have existed as long as time itself. If one day, all these prove to be lies? What if our physical bodies are stored at some unknown places while our minds lived in a virtual reality world, just as Neo did? Only thinking about it sent chills down their spines and scared them. After all, they didn't know anything. They were living in the mortal world, no one could say that it was impossible. At these thoughts, some cultivators felt weak in their legs. What if they found that they had been living in a dream after cultivating for hundreds of years? Master, pinch me so that I will know if I'm dreaming. Feng Hua and Yuexin looked fearful. Pooh! If it's really a dream, it's no use pinching you. Su Tianji said morosely. How come you turned into humans in the dream while I am a deer? It's not fair. A big white deer yelled its complaint. Obviously, its concern seemed to be different from the others. This, Mo Xian, Mr. Fang put his hand on his forehead. Stay strong and don't get swayed by external things. Gu Tingyun inhaled deeply, even though he had been doubtful for 1 second as well. However, as a Grand Master, his mind and fortitude were much stronger than these small and weak cultivators. Let's continue with the movie. Nalan Hongyu said, obviously, their world is different from ours. Don't dwell on the impossible, little girls. It's just a movie, right? Song Qingfeng snapped back to his senses. I wish that I could one day wake up as Li Xiaoao. After all, the legend of the sword and fairy one began with a dream. Despite his casual words, he was still a bit doubtful and spooked out. Right. Su Tianji rolled her eyes at Mr. Fang. It almost swayed my faith in Dao. Mr. Fang didn't know what to say for a second. It's not my fault that you know so little about the world. People instinctively avoided harm and pursued benefits. Although some people might get a horrifying idea at some point, they would discard it as a story if they didn't want it to be true. Besides, this was only a story, a movie, wasn't it? However, this movie still shocked the viewers so much that they began to doubt the truth of their lives. As for the young people, they didn't dare to dwell on this thought. It was natural to think about the origin of the world and life, but the story depicted in the movie was scary. Perhaps many people were comforting themselves that it was just a movie. Although this movie spawned doubt in their minds about life itself, they were still avidly curious to see what would happen next in the story. The following plot was simple. Neo recovered his strength and got familiar with the programs in the Matrix while strengthening himself with it being the foundation. Obviously, the rules in the Matrix were different from those in the real world. The agents could borrow any human body in the Matrix and take full use of the rules in the Matrix. In the Matrix, they were godlike existences. Unkillable, able to change into anybody, could bend rules and control time, they could do anything unimaginable to humans. Humans entering the Matrix would die if they encountered the agents. Obviously, it was difficult to free humankind. However, they must enter the Matrix to save their minds first, since only rescuing the physical bodies was a meaningless job as the bodies were like corpses without consciousness. By now, the audience began to have a general idea of the worldview expressed in the movie. For the cultivators and warriors, the humans in this movie had gone off track with their technological advancements. These humans put all their strength and energy into developing spiritual artifacts instead of improving their own bodies. In the world shown in the movie, the humans created many spiritual artifacts with extremely high intelligence, which eventually sent humans themselves into hell. Now, this was the hackers' path to redemption. This wasn't an ordinary movie discussing hackers. It was about the humans' revolution at the end of the world. The technology level in the movie was too high for the cultivators to reach with their current research level, but it didn't stop them from understanding this system. For most of them, they just watched it as an ordinary movie since not all of them studied spiritual artifacts. However, this movie shocked them more than anything else, and they watched from different lenses. The world shown in the movie was eye-opening. Although the viewers knew that anything could happen in the world, this story still went beyond everyone's imagination. Most of them watched the movie with wide-open eyes and mouths from the beginning to the end. By now, the people in the movie believed that they had found the one. They believed that it was time to fight back. Obviously, this attack was a total failure. Perhaps it would have been fine if no accidents happened. To their surprise, they had a traitor among them. The traitor was a person who was tired of struggling in fear each day in the end of the world. This person wanted to return to the Matrix as an ignorant ordinary person. After all, ignorance was a blessing. Meanwhile, it seemed that Neo wasn't the one, at least not yet. Maybe he had the potential to become the one, but he was far from that right now. The Matrix changed the program and trapped everyone inside. Death in the Matrix meant death in the real world, and many people died in this battle. Except for Neo and the heroine, no one escaped from the Matrix. Even their leader, Morpheus, was trapped inside while he tried to slow down the agents. This system version of the movie was different from the original version. In the original version, people would instantly die if they were unplugged when their awareness was still inside the Matrix. However, in the system version, the people's awareness would slowly disappear in the Matrix while their physical bodies would suffer brain death. Seeing the traitor unplug several people and causing them brain death, Mo Xian and other faint-hearted girls were scared. Immediately, they put down their virtual reality headset and found that they could still go back. Then, they reconnected again. Then, they disconnected and connected again and again several times. As a result, some girls beside Mr. Fang kept disappearing and appearing. Everyone gaped at what they were doing, and they were speechless. Mr. Fang was exasperated. Damn it! Are you dumb or not? Does it mean that my feeling of realness in this world is the result of a similar virtual reality technology? While watching the movie, Li Haoran appraised his senses. Impossible. The Zika spiritual master said, my vital soul can leave my body already, and the false feelings of the physical body can't fool me. Even if she were trapped inside a fantasy array, she still couldn't tell the subtle difference between the real and the fake. Just like when Wuzone was trapped in the fantasy array in a celestial relic, he also knew that he was inside a fantasy array. Even Neo, who is the one, can't distinguish the difference, right? I'm afraid that it isn't only a reaction of the physical body. However, after awakening, Neo never doubted that the world inside the Matrix was fake, and he still had a subtle feeling of dreaming even though he was clearly awake. When they watched the great battle between Fei Peng and Chang Lu, everyone including Gu Tingyun who had much more life experience and higher cultivation strength had thought it was real. They didn't see that it was fake and virtual reality. What was more was that the higher level cultivators could leave a trace of their awareness in the real world to keep watching the surroundings while playing the game. It felt the same as when they released a streak of their vital soul into a mystic realm to explore while their physical bodies remained outside. Virtual reality is supposed to be like this, Lan Mo speculated, but the things in the shop must be different. If it is the same thing as in the movie, we would have died many times. In the virtual reality world in the Matrix, the death of awareness meant the death of the physical body. If the games in the shop had the same mechanism as the movie, the people here would have died dozens or hundreds of times by now. After all, each of them had died many times in the games. The people instantly fell silent. Watch the movie, continue watching the movie. They immediately changed the topic. At this moment, all of them had witnessed the horrifying abilities of the agents who could change from any people in this world and possessed unimaginable strength. No attacks were effective on them. Even Morpheus, the hacker who had elevated his abilities beyond the limit of ordinary people in this digital world, could do nothing to the agent in front of them named Smith. How can he be so strong? Song Qingfeng exclaimed in astonishment, he feels nothing just standing there while taking the beating. There wasn't even a scratch on his skin. After accepting everything when they reached and comprehended the horrifying truth, they felt a thrill and enjoyment as they watched the movie. The combat style of the hackers in the movie went beyond the imagination of the audience. Now, it was time for Neo to decide if he should give up on Morpheus and escape or return to the virtual reality world to rescue him. Of course, the main character Neo chose the latter. The most thrilling moment came when the two walked in wearing black coats and high boots with a box of weapons in hands. One must admit that humans sometimes shared the concepts of beauty. Besides, many viewers had played some modern games and thus were used to this style of dressing. Dashing! Awesome! In fact, this style of dress was closer to the viewers with long coats, long pants, and high boots. The only difference was the materials of the attire which made them look strange to the viewers. Song Qingfeng looked down at his Kyokusanagi costume, wondering if he should change his cosplay tomorrow. The battle of the two hackers in the virtual reality world was obviously different from those in the real world. They could speed up, dodge bullets, and use all kinds of close-range combat techniques. The audience exclaimed in awe when they watched the hackers' accurate aiming and the wipeout of the well-equipped police officers working under the agents. All those operations were not human-like. Lin Xiao exclaimed, "It's f***ing awesome." Mo Xian was dumbfounded as well. "Sir, can we learn this? If we can be as awesome as this while doing jobs in Grand Theft Auto 5, while his face twitched, Mr. Fang remembered that the online mode of the game had been full of such immortals before he traveled through space and time. Anyway, the scenes in the movie were indeed thrilling. Neo ran through the gunfire while dodging and firing with all kinds of fancy moves. The enemy's bullets couldn't even touch his clothes. When the gunshots ceased, all were dead except Neo and the heroine. Neo had been growing and could use an ordinary pistol to break steel. When they got up to the roof to take the helicopter, an agent came after them. The way he dodged the bullet is insane. At this moment, the audience stood on the roof and watched Neo fire several strengthened bullets in the blink of an eye. The agent before him was so fast that his movements left a series of afterimages. Without moving his feet, he had dodged all the bullets. Obviously, Neo was learning this method as well. Everyone looked from Neo's perspective and saw that everything around him slowed down. Even the strengthened bullets shot by the agents looked extremely slow, and they could even see the trajectories of the bullets with their eyes. However, in the eyes of the ordinary people, these bullets were too fast to detect and see with their eyes. This was the famous bullet time. Awesome! Invincible! The scene was indeed cool when Neo and the Black Windbreaker battled with the expressionless agent in the black suit and sunglasses while the extremely fast bullets shot past them as if it were in slow motion. The young people in the audience exclaimed in astonishment. After all, even warriors with high cultivation strength didn't dare to dodge bullets by swaying their bodies without moving their feet. Besides, the agent's bullets were so fast and powerful that they went beyond the limit set by the laws of nature. With combined forces, the two hackers finally killed one agent. However, they had just killed the police officer whose body had been taken by the agent, and the agent had just returned to where he had come from. This kind of existence obviously couldn't be killed. How can they fire without aiming? The two hackers came into the room where Morpheus was imprisoned. Among the exclamations of the audience, Smith fired with an ordinary pistol, but each bullet shot through the wall without losing any momentum. While Morpheus fled with great speed, the agent shot at him through a thick wall and wounded him in the leg. It is indeed a battle between immortals. Oh my goodness, if I had this power when I played Counter-Strike, I would have gotten first place, Su Tianji said. Mr. Fang's face turned dark again. Both parties are using the power of laws. Gu Tingyun narrowed his eyes. Guns can be used this way. Ning Bai's eyelids twitched. It looked to be a battle of modern weapons, but in fact, it went beyond the realm of weapons. In the eyes of the cultivators, it was a battle of laws. 2 shots from the pistol took down the helicopter. Many people who had played with guns knew the power of ordinary handguns. Then, they saw Smith shoot down Neo's helicopter with 2 shots. Under this situation, they could only run. They would be safe if they could find the exit point and return to the real world. But unfortunately, when Morpheus and the heroine Trinity fled to the telephone booth, the beggar beside it suddenly turned into an agent who then destroyed the telephone booth. The two parties could only engage in the final battle. This was the climax of this movie. Although both people used the most ordinary combat techniques, the horrifying force and speed of each strike were dizzying to look. At last they came into the subway station, and they unleashed all their power. In the eyes of the cultivators and warriors with low-level cultivation strength, it was a fist-to-fist combat of techniques. However, from the perspective of the grandmasters who had begun to understand the laws of nature, they could tell that this was a high-level battle of the comprehension of laws. The fighters used their understanding of the laws of this world in their attacks and defenses. They used a series of unimaginable moves. For these cultivators, this was a soul-stirring high-level battle. How come this guy can't be killed? Li Lanruo, Mu Qing, and other girls from the Heavenly Academy yelled in astonishment. Regardless of how they fought, they remained intact. The audience watched the battle standing in the subway station. The fighters' fists and feet moved so fast that they were just blurry shadows to ordinary people, others couldn't see them clearly. When the subway train ran over Agent Smith, everyone thought that he was finally dead. However, when the train stopped, one of the passengers in the train changed into Smith and walked out intact. So powerful! It was more terrifying than being unkillable. Even demons and gods needed time to gather their body parts after being shattered. The hackers had no other options but to run. This part was extremely thrilling since the agents seemed to be everywhere. Wherever the hackers went, the humans around them would turn into agents. My goodness! Many girls shrieked, hugging their heads together. How can they deal with these agents? At this moment, Smith caught up with Neo and fired 2 shots at his vital spot. Then, several more shots hit him. In the real world, Neo's electrocardiography became a flat line. It meant that he was dead since his awareness in the virtual reality world was scattering. If his awareness was eliminated, the so-called The One would vanish completely. Obviously, The One wasn't invincible. Otherwise, the one who had begun the revolution and led them wouldn't have died. However, miracles did sometimes happen in this world. After all, he was a person who had abilities no ordinary people had. Some people in the audience suddenly shrieked. He's not dead. Yu Yan pointed forward and exclaimed. F***ck. Song Ching Feng widened his eyes. Coming back to life. Nalan Hongguo stared at the scene before him as well. Obviously, this kid has gained a total understanding of the laws in the world. A big demon floated in midair and said, it's nothing for him to come back to life. Tang Yu said, the set of laws are virtual, there is nothing strange, right? The laws are virtual. Gu Tingyun stroked his beard, looking thoughtful. He pointed at the scene before them and said, this is a complete and real world. Even though it was virtual reality. At this moment, the 3 agents found Neo coming back to life. They turned around and fired several shots. However, instead of dodging the bullets, Neo made all the bullets hover before him. It wasn't a pause of time since the bullets behind the hovering bullets were still moving forward. It seemed as if the dynamic scene suddenly turned into a static scene. Then, the camera changed to Neo's perspective. The audience saw everything before them, including the ceiling, walls, ground, and even the 3 agents, had turned into rows of flowing data. Ruan Ning gasped, is this the basic form of this virtual reality world? Su Tianji exclaimed, is this virtual reality world made up of these numbers and digits? The cultivators from Half City were a little scared by this scene. It is unimaginable. Everyone knew that the real world was made up of yin essence and yang essence. But they had never imagined that digits could also form a world. Also, the world looked so real. Then, they saw Neo block his rival's attacks as if they were child's play. He first blocked with his hands casually, and then he blocked the attacks with one hand without sparing a glance at his opponents. They were obviously no longer at the same level of strength. At this moment, the agents could no longer be called invincible. Lan Mo laughed and said, I understand it. They use the lightning energy to show and form digits, and they in turn use digits to form patterns and words, which eventually form a complete world. As a member of Wu Wei Daoist Alliance, he obviously was quite familiar with these electrical spiritual artifacts. It wasn't like they never studied these things. This world is completely made up of digits and can only be accessed by consciousness and awareness. This story depicts an idea beyond one's imagination, Gu Tingyu said with a sigh of appreciation, it's unthinkable. Tang Yu shook his head and said, unfortunately, the virtual reality world can never be real. Li Haoran said in reminiscence, it seems that the intelligence of Red Queen is also made up of numbers and digits. I wonder, if the intelligence of these machines is also made up of digits. All the people stared at him in astonishment. After all, except the horrifying supreme treasures which had existed for many years, most of the spiritual artifacts with spirits only had child-level intelligence. You could use such digits to create high-level intelligence. At this point, the movie was coming to an end with the one recovering his power and abilities. As for the agents, they were naturally not his matches. After Neo rewrote the programs, the unkillable abilities of the agents became a joke. Smith exploded into digital debris. The other two agents instantly fled. Ha 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 ha. Awesome. This main character is unrivaled. So dashing. Neo absolutely has the power to save the world. He's so powerful. Song Qingfeng said, I must learn his skill of dodging bullets. I'll dodge bullets this way next time. Lin Xiao added, then, you will become a sieve, young Master Song. Long after the movie came to an end, the audience was still lingering in this wondrous world. It was hard to believe that there were such humans living in such a world depicted in the movie. They were amazed by the story and the development of the plot. The most impressive parts were when Neo woke up from the virtual reality world and the last grand battle. For the young cultivators and warriors, the last scene, in which Neo paused all the bullets and fought the agent with one hand, was super dashing. They were amazed by the unthinkable power and speed that Neo showed. The Grand Masters among the cultivators and warriors were deep in thought after watching the movie. They had seen worlds that were artificially created. In fact, the mystical realms in the relics were a kind of small world. However, the world depicted in the movie was complete with everything from the real world. Also, the basic structure of this world was made up of rows of digits. This was indeed hard to imagine. The moment that the movie ended, the three shops instantly got loud with discussions. With their current level of knowledge, even the Wu-Videist Alliance could do nothing but borrow some basic ideas from this advanced technology. The AI and the matrix shown in the movie were too advanced for them to study, it wasn't even realistic. They might have a small chance if they understood the Red Queen in Resident Evil. Anyway, they had obtained a deep understanding of the horrifying power of AI. For grand cultivators and warriors, they got a better understanding of laws, and that was the key benefit of the movie. After all, the movie had demonstrated the law with a virtual reality world and showed the structure of this world to all the viewers. It was quite beneficial to those people who either had reached this realm or would reach this realm in the future. They were not supposed to access the knowledge of building and creating small worlds like the mystical realm in the relics. But now, they began to understand some secrets about them. It was deflated. Gag. Thank you. A demonic woman with brown hair and green eyes covered her smirk with her hand. Old demon, your idea is worth a try. You can't try it. It's my idea. This idea sounds good. Unbound King, who had great hearing, overheard them. In the past, few people had the opportunity to deal with such things. But now, after reading the heavenly book and watching all kinds of battles between immortals and demons, many grand cultivators and warriors were gradually getting contact with this new realm. Of course, for most of them, they only got a glimpse of it. This idea is indeed good. Shui Xianyun got close and joined the conversation. Ah! None of you can try it. It's my invention. Shut up. If you yell again, I'll deal with you as a troublemaker. Ruan-Ning gave it a hard look. It instantly shut up. Meanwhile, in the Yuanyang city shop, the cultivators and warriors put down their virtual reality headsets one after another. No matter if they were grand cultivators or ordinary disciples, none of them could remain calm. Senior sister. Yu Bai felt someone tugging at her clothes. She turned and saw Mu Qing with an uneasy expression on her face. I suspect that it's our consciousness that's sitting here while our physical bodies, she spoke haltingly, after all, at the beginning of the movie, Neo didn't know that he was living in the virtual reality world. I have the same suspicion. Zhang Xiaoyu brought her small arms together before her chest and mumbled, we might be living in a virtual reality world. I'm so awesome, so I must be the one. We'll save humankind together. It was perfect. Nonsense. I'm the one. Mu Qing complained. I want to be the one too. The big white deer said with its head lowered. Zhang Xiaoyu said, whoever has the greatest power will be the one. Sitting beside Zhang Xiaoyu, Mr. Fang pinched her cheek with a dark expression. I think you just want to be the one. The lowly copied Neo in the movie and gave him a middle finger in disdain. Big brother, what do you think? Zhang Xian didn't hear her since he had started watching the movie for the second time. Yu Bai said, anyway, their weapons are impressive. I wonder where we can get them. The other disciples from the Heavenly Academy were also talking about the weapons. Brother Tang, Wang Xie said, the Tang family is famous for making machines and spiritual artifacts. I wonder if you can make copies of the weapons in the movie. Right. Young Master Tang. Su Chengfeng, a direct descendant of the Su family with excellent talent, was quite close to the geniuses from these ancient families. When he put down his virtual reality headset, the first thought that he had was the Tang family. A burly man also came over, he was Lei Ge of the Lei family. Young Master Tang. Your Tang family, before he could finish, he heard shrieks beside him. Are these pistols? Mu Qing stared at the two pistols in Zhang Xiaoyu's hands. The antique-looking guns had patterns engraved on the surface, they were copies of Dante's handguns. Humph! Wow! Junior sister Xiaoyu! Mu Qing exclaimed, can you fire these guns? Yes. Li Lanruo had watched Zhang Xiaoyu deal with a group of cultivators with these guns. These guns might not be able to deal with strong cultivators such as Lei Ge and Su Chengfeng, but they were more than enough to deal with cultivators such as Du Zuzi who were weaker. They consumed little spiritual essence and had great power. Of course. After replying, Zhang Xiaoyu walked out of the shop and fired 2 shots. Glancing at the 2 bullet holes with smoke in the ground, Wang Xie looked toward Tang Yu standing beside him. We didn't make those. Tang Yu said, it seems that the shop owner doesn't only have cars but guns as well. The production of guns was a partnership between Mr. Fang, the Wu Videist Alliance, and the people who won prizes in the Counter-Strike competition. After many breakthroughs that they made in technology, they had long passed the difficult stage in which they couldn't even mimic an ordinary pistol. Zhang Xiaoyu injected some spiritual essence into the guns, and blue light instantly engulfed them. Xiaoyu, you're awesome! Mu Qing had stars in her eyes. Where did you get the guns? People like Su Chengfeng and Lei Ge stared at the guns with widened eyes. After firing, Zhang Xiaoyu met Mr. Fang's gaze and gave him a victory hand with some smugness. Mr. Fang's face turned dark. Don't ruin the ground before my shop. Ugh, these weapons looked ordinary, but when Smith and Neo used them, they looked unrivaled. The bullets were fast, convenient, powerful, they could pierce through walls and be used from a long distance. Of course, in the real world, it was almost impossible to upgrade the bullets at will casually. Perhaps the big demon in Half City had the ability to mimic some parts of such power, but it didn't even have any spiritual essence in its body right now. While almost none of the cultivators in the deserted sea realm could reach the realm of laws, the cultivators in the spiritual state were different. Their abilities and accumulations in this aspect were greater than those people in the deserted sea realm. The laws were the rules that all the things in the world had to follow and operate by. In this world, the laws and the rules were the same thing. They just had different names in different places. Almost each of the families in the spiritual state obtained and mastered more than one law, which they had gotten either through inheritance or chance since they had been around for a long time. Some of the laws were stored in artifacts, some were supreme spiritual items born with the power of laws, some were artifact spirits that had been inherited from the beginning of time for ages. The laws were the inheritances that enabled the ancient families to prosper for many, many years. Other than these ancient families, a few extremely powerful forces and cultivators had also reached the realm of laws and had saved and passed down their understanding to their descendants. Therefore, they could mimic some of the power shown in the movie. For example, Gu Tingyun's understanding of wind had reached the realm of laws. If he attached it to a bullet, most of the defenses in the world could be treated as not there before the bullet. Gu Tingyun walked out the door with a benign smile. "Little girl of the Zhang family, can I borrow your gun for a while?" "Master." Wang Xia looked at Gu Tingyun in bafflement. "After watching The Matrix, I have obtained some inspiration," Gu Tingyun said. "Now, I need a gun to test my theory." "Okay." Zhang Xiaoyu had no choice but hand a pistol to him since he was the old academy master. While gripping the gun, Gu Tingyun closed his eyes and took some time to prepare. All the people gazed at him. They held their breaths, not wanting to miss any details. Gu Tingyun slowly raised the gun. In the next moment, a voice floated out from the shop. "You'll be dealt with as a troublemaker if you break the ground before the shop." The old man looked as if he had just swallowed a dead fly. If possible, he would have beaten Mr. Fang to death. Subconsciously, they began to look for something with a similar theme. Lei Ji asked, "Does anyone know if the shop has similar movies?" With half of her time working as an employee of the shop, Li Lanruo was quite familiar with the shop's movies and games. "From what I know, Resident Evil has a similar theme." "Brother Wang, should we watch the Resident Evil?" Tang Yu asked. While some people planned to watch The Matrix again, others tried to find similar movies to watch. After talking with some customers from the Zhuhua City shop and Half City shop, they began to have a general idea about the categories of the strange movies and games in the shop. The category of sci-fi included the games and movies such as The Matrix, in which people used mechanic spiritual artifacts while their own strengths were not great. The category of Xiangxia included the games and movies such as The Legend of the Sword and Fairy, and Jade Dynasty. As for the category of magic fantasy, they could only experience it through the movie Harry Potter, since they couldn't meet the demons and evils in Devil May Cry 3 and Lords of Hell and Diablo 2 at the moment. "Do you guys want to watch Resident Evil together?" Tang Yu copied the shop owner's tone and asked, "Come on. The tour bus of Resident Evil 1 is about to embark." "Young Master Tang, I'll go. Count me in." "Me too." Wang Xia asked in bafflement, "Junior brother Tang, don't you want to play The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3? "It's not that I don't want to play," Tang Yu said, "I'm still waiting for the guide." Someone named New Snow in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy forum posted a guide of the game, and I gained great progress in the game following her tips. Unfortunately, the guide stops at the Immortal Realm, and I'm waiting for her to update the guide. "Is she a cultivator from the Deserted Sea Realm?" Su Chengfeng asked. "Right," Tang Yu said, "it's said that the main shop is over there." "Young Master Tang." Su Chengfeng glanced around before lowering his voice. "Have you heard about the tales about the Deserted Sea Realm?" "What tales?" Tang Yu shook his head and said, "I hadn't heard of the Deserted Sea Realm until I came into this shop. It's said that that place is very remote and has scarce spiritual essence, separated from us by heavenly barriers. Anyway, it's super inconvenient to get there." "Deserted Sea Realm?" Lei Ji asked curiously on the side, "Isn't it the name for the place with little spiritual essence beyond the heavenly abyss sea?" Tang Yu said, "Young Master Su's family is famous for having large volumes of ancient scrolls and documents. Do you have more information about this place?" Su Chengfeng said, "I read about it in a fragment of a scroll in my family. I don't know if the record is true or not." "Don't you see any records about it, your Tang family?" "Who knows? After all, no one would have cared about the desolate deserted area before they came into the shop. But now, Tang Yu and others' interest was piqued since they had talked with people from the deserted sea realm about the legend of sword and fairy in the group chat and the guide of fighting bosses in the forum. Su Chengfeng said, the record said that that place is like a huge prison, stating that it's a place for prisoners and is thus ominous. A place for prisoners and is thus ominous. Hearing their conversation about the deserted sea realm, Wang Xie, who was listening on the side, looked puzzled. The ancient scrolls said that thousands of years ago, when the strength of the heavenly barrier weakened, the Zixiao spiritual master had traveled there and brought back a group of cultivators from the deserted sea realm. Really? Tang Yu asked, then, why haven't we heard of it before? I have no idea. After the Zixiao spiritual master passed away, no one heard of them anymore. Meanwhile, at the shore of Heavenly Abyss Sea, which was north to the Heavenly Academy. It was late in the night, ocean breezes brushed over the beach, and faint sounds of rolling waves could be vaguely heard in the distance. The people in the small town were sound asleep. Across the ocean to the north of Heavenly Abyss Ocean was the deserted sea realm. The deserted sea realm was called a sea realm since most of the place was covered by seas and oceans. Looking into the distance from the beach, one could see nothing but dark ocean. Even moonlight and starlight were swallowed by this darkness. In the depths of the ocean, there seemed to be an ugly fierce ghost guarding the place. On the watchtower, the soldiers woke up from their doze and stared into the distance. No one knew what they were watching for, they had done it since the ancient times. Yawn. It was late in the night. Fang Qi yawned heavily while the customers left the shop in twos and threes. Junior brother Tang. Curious, Wang Xie looked at Tang Yu, who had just walked out of the shop. How come you're so late today? Brother Wang, you're late too. Tang Yu chuckled. With a scroll in his hand, Wang Xie rubbed his eyes. I read the official novel of Diablo 2 in the shop for a whole day. I borrowed this scroll from junior sister Xiaoyu to read back at my place. The demonic gods in this story are unthinkable. I recommend you read it, junior brother Tang. Well, I'm afraid that I don't have time for it lately. Tang Yu stretched and said, today, I bought the blueprint of a basic gun structure, I won't be able to sleep well until I can figure it out. Ha 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 ha. Wang Xie said while laughing, I know the Tang family excels in machines and mechanisms. Are you interested in guns? I'm fascinated by guns after watching The Matrix, Tang Yu said with a chuckle. Now after watching Resident Evil, I found that these weapons are quite exquisite. What do they call these weapons? Tang Yu said, art. Yes. They're called art. Castellan Zone, you're in a bad mood today. Elder Yu in a grey-white robe said with a chuckle. The tall Castellan of Yuanyang City said, I thought there were only a few places with high-level martial deo in the world. However, I saw a post in the forum talking about martial deo which inspired me greatly. Elder Yu asked curiously, isn't it a good thing? Unfortunately, I had just joined that person's group chat in QQ and chatted for a little while when my computer time was up. He stomped his foot and said, how come I can't chat with people freely? There are so many restrictions. It's said the little Princess Zhang has a communication jade which can connect with QQ, Elder Yu said while stroking his beard. Tomorrow, I'll borrow it and try logging into my QQ account, Zhongwu complained. How come our communication jades are so lame that they are even worse than those in the deserted sea realm? Little Xiner, close the shop. Okay. Boss. Fang Qi suddenly had the feeling that a pair of eyes were staring at the shop from the depths of the darkness outside. He wasn't sure if it was an illusion. He raised his head and looked out, but he saw nothing. Standing in the mist while holding an ancient sword in his hand, he formed a sword spell with one hand and chanted, Sword Control Technique. Up. It was silent. Sword Control Technique. Up. The sword tip lightly shivered. Is it because I didn't put enough spiritual essence in it? He gathered more spiritual essence. Up. A sharp sword energy shot into the sky. Wang Xie, who had just come to the door, was startled. It was done. Stroking his silver beard, Gu Tingyun laughed and said, "What do you think of my sword control technique? Unrivaled." "Absolutely." Boom. The cottage collapsed, the old pine tree fell, and even the pot of newly made tea was gone. After a long pause, a shout came from the mountain peak, "My purple mist mystic sand teapot!" 4 pretty girls presented a dazzling scene in Heavenly Academy. "Junior sister Xiaoyu, where are your sidekicks today?" "Humph. Who knows? I heard that they went to the Tang family to order guns. After all, the deserted sea realm is too far from here," Zhang Xiaoyu said. "I'll tell you what, the shop owner has a big gun which can launch unlimited rocket missiles, it's super powerful. But the despicable shop owner is stingy and doesn't let me play with it. It's said that the shop owner even has the golden sun wheel and golden moon wheel." Mu Qing gossiped and asked with bright eyes, "He even can use Sword God?" "I haven't seen Sword God," Li Lanruo said on the side, "but I saw him use release, and its power was terrifying." "What technique is release?" The others leaned over. In another corner at the Heavenly Academy, a black-robed elegant young man had a feather fan in one hand while holding a strange blue flame in the other hand. Beside him was a roll of an exquisite drawing which obviously had been drawn last night. With a wave of the folding fan in his left hand, a piece of metal entered the flame in his right palm. Then, the metal was extended and shaped in the flame. Beside him were parts including a barrel, a magazine, springs, etc. They were all components that went into a gun. "It's done." With smooth and swift movements, he put these components together and placed the only bullet in it. "Senior Brother Tang, come in." A tall young man wearing green clothes walked in from the outside. "Senior Brother Tang, is this a gun?" "Of course. It's a piece of cake for me to make these little components." He waved the gun and put his finger on the trigger while saying, "I improved the formula of the powder yesterday, and its power is even greater than before." Lei Ji was elated. "Really?" Boom! A mass of black smoke rose in the room. In a beautiful pavilion inside the Heavenly Academy, a purple-clothed, elegant young man stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. "Have you found it out?" "Young master, I found it out. The Matrix is a movie, and the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 that they are talking about is a game in the Origins Internet Club." A cute purple-clothed maid stood behind him. "Wang Xiet! Wang Xiet! How can you get obsessed with games and toys after defeating me?" The young man's face turned grim. He looked at his communication jade. "He even sent me a message, asking me to play games with him? Do I look like a wastrel? This Wang Xiet is so lazy and lacks ambition. You'll soon surpass him, young master." "No." Sun Yuan said in a deep voice, "Nangang Zhou is less powerful than he looks. In the Heavenly Academy, only Wang Xiet is my match, which is rare for me. Since he can't get out of his current mood himself, I must warn him and get him out of the bad habits." "You're right, young master. Where is he?" Sun Yuan asked. "I think he has gone to that shop again. Take me there." "Yan," Mr. Fang stretched and walked out of his room. Right now, Li Wei had gone downstairs to open the shop. "Good morning, boss." "Morning." Mr. Fang greeted the shy girl and went to wash up. "Please make a bowl of instant noodles for me. With a sausage." The shop had only released The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 and The Matrix, and new online games were still not available, but the shop was still thronged with customers. There weren't many sci-fi items in the shop, but after watching The Matrix, many customers in Half City and Yuanyang City went back to watch Resident Evil. As for artificial intelligence, the Wu Daoist Alliance had begun studying it long ago. Due to their low-level technology, they had never produced any artificial spirits and spiritual treasures and artifacts yet. If they succeeded in the research, they would have no problem producing artificial artifact and treasure spirits. Of course, they had little knowledge in this area, and their foundation was weak. They had learned little in Grand Theft Auto 5 and had only made the new communication jade with their system of spiritual spells. Without any knowledge of programming, it was impossible to create artificial intelligence. They were on the brink of giving up. In contrast, they had a lot more experience in making spiritual artifacts. After watching The Matrix, there was a hot trend of making spiritual artifacts. After all, it would be awesome if they could create a virtual reality world as shown in the movie. Then, in this virtual reality world, they would be the god. How amazing would that be? Of course, it was an impossible task for them right now. It would take them a long time to move from beginners to novices. Although it was impossible for them to create a virtual reality world right now, they had gained some inspirations from the virtual reality world shown in The Matrix and acquired a deeper understanding of the laws in the real world. Building arrays was one example. They built the structure of arrays by simulating the movements of stars. If the people building the arrays could find out the layout and moving patterns of the stars from the study of 5 elements and the theory of yin and yang and simulate the patterns with corresponding objects, the arrays could resonate with the sun, the moon, and stars and borrow strength from them. However, this was a complete simulation. But now, they had a new idea, which was how to build a complete and comparatively perfect fantasy array from the basic structure. In contrast, most of the current fantasy realms and fantasy arrays were low-level simulations of the real world. The good ones could only give people the illusions, let alone simulating the basic structure of the world. Of course, this was a concern for the super masters instead of the weak cultivators and young people. They didn't have to spend time on that. Even for the super masters, they had a long way to go in this area. Anyway, it was something that they would consider in the future. Right now, the only thing that they could do was to watch as many movies and play as many games as possible in this internet cafe. Master. The moment Wang Xie and Gu Tingyun entered the door, a figure went toward them. Senior Master Zhou Mo. Zhou Mo came into the shop with the Baoping spiritual master and Feng Yangzi, who had monitored the Heavenly Academy exam on the spiritual ship with him. Wang Xie was about to go up and greet them when a figure with a cold face intercepted him. Brother Wang. Brother Sun. Sun Yuan looked cold. I can't believe that you are throwing your cultivation away. Are you so arrogant that you think you can rest and play after defeating me? Are you so full of yourself? Or you just hold me in such little regard? In the Zhuhua City shop, Nalan Mingxiu opened the post bar as usual and uploaded a post that she organized while eating instant noodles. In Yuanyang City shop F*CK. New Snow posted another guide. What? New Snow posted another guide. Wang Xie's eyes brightened. Master. Good. Gu Tingyun stroked his long beard and said, I'm stuck in the ghost realm. I wonder if today's guide is about the ghost realm. I think so. Wang Xie said immediately, Brother Sun, I'll talk to you later. Gu Tingyun looked pleased. Let's go online and take a look. Then, he immediately took a seat and opened the post bar. He saw a highlighted post that was pinned at the top of the bar, Guide Chasing After Souls in the Ghost Realm author, New Snow ha ha ha. It's indeed about the Ghost Realm. Gu Tingyun immediately clicked open the post. The general map of the outer range of Ghost Realm, map, the discovered side missions, Gongzi Xiao provided a part of the information, Brother Wang. Junior Brother Tang. Hurry up! New Snow updated the guide for the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3. Really? A player with the ID Lu Xiaoxian and the profile photo of White Deer replied under the post, Thank you, Great New Snow. This guide is awesome. Can you tell me who's this cute Gongzi Xiao? Why does he always provide information? Gu Tingyun glanced at the reply before copying and pasting it. Thank you, Great New Snow. This guide is awesome. Can you tell me who's this cute Gongzi Xiao? Why does he always provide information? Then, he hurriedly entered the game after replying. Clicking open the post, Wang Xie saw this reply. Sun Yuan was still standing at the entrance, and he was at a loss for words. Young master. Is that Senior Gu? Sun Yuan's face turned dark. Not only him. I saw Castellan Zong, an elder Yu, Zhou Mo, the Baoping spiritual master. What should we do now? Let's see what they are doing. He quickly walked over to watch from behind. On Gu Tingyun's screen was a young man. Wang Xie glanced at his screen and said, Master, you're fighting the Fire Ghost King already. Fighting? The Fire Ghost King? Sun Yuan looked at Wang Xie in bafflement. Yet. I didn't have time to explain it to you before, Brother Sun. You might not know, then, Wang Xie briefly told him about the game. On the screen was a world completely engulfed in flames. Standing before the main character was an ugly, burly, and fat monster with 3 horns on the forehead. The monster had been a human who was burned to death by heavenly fire in the ancient time. After his death, he had turned into a fire ghost and didn't want to enter another cycle of life of reincarnation due to his craving for the freedom in the ghost realm. His spiritual power was great, and the fire that he could use was hellfire and could burn souls into ashes. On the screen, hellfire flew around while lava flowed in from all directions. One could even feel the extremely high temperature through the screen. Sun Yuan murmured with a gloomy expression. I'll see how good and fun this game is. Since the opponent was the Fire Ghost King, the best array to deal with him was the water array. On the screen, Jing Tian and Long Kui changed positions and used water elemental spiritual spells to deal with the surrounding heat waves so that their combat strengths wouldn't decrease. On the screen, Jing Tian formed and cast a spiritual spell, and an iceberg dashed out from the ground. Fire and wind collided on the screen, and lava splashed out while flames suddenly spread all over the place. Young master, this looks powerful, a purple-clothed maid yelled in astonishment. Sun Yuan turned to look at another screen. The scene on this screen looked even more awe-inspiring. The 4 people stood in positions of a pre-arranged array and gathered their spiritual essence in one spot. All-directional demon sealing strike. Tang Yu yelled. Ah! Dumbfounded, Sun Yuan watched the shattered ground and mountain on the screen. Did young Master Tang launch this technique? How come it is earth-shaking? With gritted teeth, he put crystals on the counter. Sir, I want to play the Legend of the Sword and Fairy too. Activate the game for my ZIER as well. 8 hours had passed since he started playing. He leaped up from his seat as if there were a spring under his butt. Impossible. Isn't it a game? How come it's so powerful? Brother Wang. This game is so great. The reincarnation of an immortal. I'm the reincarnation of an immortal. Elated, he turned to speak to Wang Xie who had just gotten offline. Yet. Wang Xie looked calm. It's indeed powerful. Sun Yuan turned to look at Tang Yu. Young Master Tang, I just experienced the sword techniques of an immortal. It is unbelievable. Tang Yu looked nonchalant as well. Yet. Then, he turned to Lei Ji who had just gotten offline. Junior brother Lei. Lai Ji looked cool. It is indeed powerful. While his face twitched, Sun Yuan thought to himself, can you guys have a different expression when saying the word powerful? Walking past them, Yu Bai glanced at him and said, how come you only learned about it? We're close to passing the game. Ugh, Mu Qing said in disdain, he looks so startled. Such a newbie. Sun Yuan exchanged a look with his maid. Young master, it seems that only the 2 of us are new players. Sun Yuan's face turned dark. Ignoring him, Mu Qing asked, oh, senior sister, I heard that Nu Snow is going to try to get the perfect ending, is it true? No, she got the imperfect ending, fighting with Chonglu for some time before being defeated. I guess she will have to wait for the next time to achieve the perfect ending. The perfect ending is so hard to get, Mu Qing said with a frown. It's said that the players in the Zhuhua City shop all got imperfect endings. It can't be helped. Tang Yu said on the side, Brother Lu has already restricted his power, and that's the best we can get. So powerful, Wang Xie said while clicking his tongue. After playing the game for the first round, we can't keep many of the treasures. It's said that Nu Snow has been focusing purely on sword techniques. We have to admit that the players in their shop are very good. It doesn't matter, Sun Yuan said with heroic passion, when we get used to the game, we'll leave them in the dust. Ha 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 ha. It's good to have confidence. As geniuses of the Heavenly Academy, they could admire others but would never admit defeat. In this world, some people focused on spiritual spells, and some focused on combat techniques. The Matrix inspired the artifact masters in arrays and fantasy spells, and the people who wanted to expand their forces would go and play the Legend of Mir 2. However, for people who wanted to sharpen their commanding skills in war, the Legend of Mir 2 had its limits. After all, the players couldn't die, which made the strategies used in the game quite different from those in real wars. The real strategies decided the outcome of wars from thousands of kilometers away. Zhang Xian lounged on his computer chair. He had played many games and had just finished the Huaying ending in The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3. In this ending, Jing Tian would battle with Chonglu 10 years later after the end of the game. It would be great if there's a game that simulates wars so that we could practice strategies and make decisions to command troops. The endings in The Legend of Sword and Fairy 3 had all come out. After fighting hard for days, Nalan Mingxue finally achieved the perfect ending in the second round. Many players who were fast with the progress had gotten to the end. The Zai Xian ending had the shortest process. In this ending, Chonglu used his own demonic energy to repair the demon-suppressing tower for Zai Xian, and the story ended after the battle with the evil sword immortal. Of course, some people got the ending in which both Xian Jian and Long Kui died, which doesn't deserve to be discussed here. By now, the number of activations of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 had surpassed 4,000. The Matrix had attracted many viewers from the day it was released. Even though this movie didn't help viewers improve their strength in clear ways and was limited in this aspect, it still had a high number of activations with its novel plot and imagination. The popularity of this movie even increased the activations of the Resident Evil movie and game. Of course, some players enjoyed the games and movies without expecting to obtain benefits. In fact, Gu Tingyun and Zhongwu liked the Resident Evil game and movie even though they didn't obtain any benefits from them. They liked them because these games and movies brought something new to their long lives of cultivation. Even the Grandmasters found this kind of novelty breathtaking. Yes, it was breathtaking. In the tedious life of cultivation, which was thousands of years long, everything seemed the same. Therefore, they sometimes felt bored. It was especially the case with people such as Gu Tingyun, who had achieved a realm as high as he could but only had limited years remaining in his life. Cultivation didn't matter much to them, and the only job for them now was teaching disciples and enjoying the last years in life. Even some young people such as Wang Xie and Sun Yuan sometimes felt bored. They were born in this huge system and had to abide by every rule of the world, making no mistakes. In comparison, these new things brought them some ripples in their sedate lives in which they do nothing but gain cultivation strength and fight for treasures. The new things weren't better, they were just new and novel. Now, they added some new terms to their lives which was filled with cultivators, warriors, ascendants, and immortals. Brother Wang, I'm going to fight Chonglu today. Sun Yuan was smug since that he could finally meet the most powerful demonic god in the legends. He was excited about this prospect. You suck, Tang Yu said in disdain, I'm halfway through the second round. I suck? You know nothing. I'm invincible. Sun Yuan rolled his eyes at him and said, Jing Tian's speed in mastering spiritual spells is many times faster than ours. Now, I've mastered all 3 styles of spiritual spells. I'll absolutely defeat Chonglu. I'll show you. I bet that you can't do it even if you spend all day on it. Tang Yuan said in amusement. Defeating Chonglu is more difficult than passing a tribulation. Wang Xie shook his head in resignation. I think it makes more sense for us to bet on if he can pass the tribulation and ascend today. Sun Yuan's face turned dark. 3 seconds after he entered the new immortal realm, his screen turned grey while Chong Lu stood with 2 blades in his hands that were covered in blood. He died. I was killed by a tribulation lightning bolt. No one knew how to ascend to heaven and what it looked like above the mortal world. Even Mr. Fang's sword control technique couldn't help them fly out of this world. Each day, people looked up at the starry sky. The sun, the moon, and stars moved, but people didn't know what the stars really were. They didn't know if the sky had an end or what the structure of the sky looked like and how it was different from this world. The only thing was for sure, Mr. Fang couldn't fly out of this world. No one could fly out of it. It was natural that the people in this world had no idea what the galaxy really looked like. Perhaps they still fantasize about a realm of gods with celestial palaces in heaven. It was a realm where every cultivator and warrior wished to go to. In this dreamy realm, there was no aging, illnesses, or death. Sir, what is this StarCraft? Many people were playing The Legend of Sword and Fairy 3 for the second time since there hadn't been new games for a long time. Some players even went to play Resident Evil and cleared the stage. The Matrix had spawned new bizarre ideas in them about the origin of the world. Then, StarCraft might introduce them to an even broader world. Boss, lowly Zhang Xiaoyu looked at Mr. Fang imploringly. Can we watch you play the game? I want to watch it. I want to watch it. The big white deer put its front hooves on the counter and looked avid. Zhang Xiaoyu stroked its furry head. Hee hee. I'll watch it with little Belle. Okay. I'll turn on the live stream. Good. Tang Yu's gaze followed Mr. Fang until the latter sat down. You are going to live stream today. He remembered that the last time when he watched the live stream, it was a thrilling battle between an immortal and a demon lord Jing Tian vs Chong Lu. The memory was still fresh in his mind. Let's go. The shop owner has turned on the live stream. What is he live streaming? Sun Yuan said solemnly, I'm passing the tribulation. F***ck your tribulation, Tang Yu said, let's go and watch the live stream. It was still early in the morning, but people bustled in all 3 shops as the popularity of Origin's internet club increased. They turned to look at the big screen. The shop owner has turned on the live stream. The people of the Nanhua faction who were walking toward the computers immediately sat on the couches with unprecedented speed. The people around them looked dazed. Before they could react, half of the seats on the couches had been taken. Soon, a row of blue alphabet-like icons appeared on the screen. Blizzard. Nalan Hongguo glanced at the big screen. Is the shop owner going to broadcast Diablo? He was baffled. The kid only got to nightmare difficulty, right? The screen showed a vast space in the universe, and the dark blue planet in the bottom left corner occupied 1/4 of the screen. There were several icons on the screen: satellite, multiple players, battleship and remains, single player, and black hole, exit. The big letters on the right side showed, StarCraft. Seeing Blizzard's logo, Zhang Xiaoyu immediately wondered, is this game a sequel or a prequel of Diablo 2? It doesn't look like one. Sitting on a couch, Yu Bai turned to the beginning of the official novel of Diablo. Diablo tells the story about the survival of humans who are stuck in the battle between angels and devils. Look. The audience looked at the big screen and saw a metallic aircraft hovering in the dark space with stars twinkling in the background. This seems to be the galaxy. This was a different place from the one described in Diablo. They all looked baffled. Is this space above the sky during the night? Yes, it must be night. Otherwise, how can it be so dark during the daytime? The opening computer graphics, CG, of StarCraft was different from other games. It was the start of a grand world and described the first encounter of humans, Terrans, and Protoss, another intelligent species in the universe. The Protoss was purifying the infested human planet, and a group of unlucky humans was watching it right there. The huge shadow cast by the spacecraft blocked out the light above their heads. When they looked up, they saw the giant thing. If it were a battleship, the bow of the battleship blocked out all the light and filled the people's vision. They felt as if they were a school of tiny fish which suddenly looked up and saw the legendary rock. What's that? This spiritual ship is so huge. It seems bigger than the Academy's sky-patrolling spiritual ship. Suddenly, blue light shot out under the ship. The big screen was filled with a wave of destructive blue light. The black-robed deist Mo yelled, "Where did these cultivators come from? How come they can build such a powerful spiritual ship?" In the Juhua City shop, a group of people sat on the couches in the lounge area. A white-robed old man was eating spicy sticks with leisure. "Brother Gongshu, how is this ship compared with the warships of your Gongshu family?" someone asked casually. "Damn it!" He put the spicy sticks on the table with force as his face turned dark. There were 3 races in StarCraft. The human civilization was based on science and technology with the assistance of Shin'ik power. Terran ghosts were one example. The Protoss was also called the race of gods. This race shared some similarities with cultivators or a magic civilization, with Templars being the center of the society. They had powerful Shin'ik abilities which seemed to be in the same category of magic power and spiritual essence. Meanwhile, the Protoss could cast magic spells and close-range combat techniques with extremely powerful individual combat forces. TL note: Protoss was directly translated into gods in the Chinese version of the game. The Zerg followed the combat style of insects and beasts. Their greatest advantage was their large population and the lack of fear of death. The Queen of Blades had once been a human and thus could battle using Shin'ik abilities. Entering the option interface, Fang Qi saw 2 options to operate the system version of StarCraft. The first option was the Commander mode, which was the most popular mode. The players would act as the commander to battle and fight with other players. The other option was the single-player RPG mode. In some battles, the players were not allowed to develop Commander Center or SCVs, worker units, and were equipped with only one or several squads without backup. They could enter the battle as an individual character such as Jim Raynor, the main character of the humans, Sarah Kerrigan, Queen of Blades, Zeratul, a Dark Templar of the Protoss, the Marines, drivers, other Templars, or hunter-killer Hydralisks, etc. Among the characters, only female players could control the Queen of Blades and Zeratul, and some other Protoss characters could only be controlled by male players. Otherwise, the players could only finish the battle from the perspective as the commander. The most classic operation was naturally the commander mode. Mr. Fang chose a human battle and started the game. This was the background of the battle. Since a colony was destroyed as introduced in the opening CG, Mr. Fang was asked to protect another colony named Marsera as the commander. In the original game, there was only a crude map with one commander center and a few SCVs. It was a barren land with a few mines. However, it was different in the system version. When Fang Qi entered the game, he saw a prosperous human colony base. The main base was a lot more complicated compared to the original version, and there was a vast interior space. There were all kinds of buildings, streets, and plants outside the commander center. It was complex and unique, looking like a small town. On the modern streets, some Marines who wore heavy armor were patrolling with huge guns. The pale grey modern rooms were the office of the judicial officer in the colony, and the young female deputy officer was reporting the situation of the colony on the side. Fang Qi looked at the screen and found that he could issue electronic or verbal instructions. The electronic commands were similar to the original version but had more complete functions. Combined with verbal instructions, he could simulate the commanding process of a battle. Of course, it was the operation method of humans, and Fang Qi still didn't know if it was different from the commanding method of the other 2 races. In the tutorial session, the players must destroy the small Zerg forces nearby. There was a squad of 12 Marines, and Fang Qi casually organized a wing-shaped formation. He found that after he told the Marines to keep this formation, they would do it when they advanced or turned to another direction. However, in the original version, the formation would be disrupted whenever they encountered an obstacle and they would block themselves with awful pathing. After the squad walked out of the center, they saw a squad of Zerglings loitering outside of the colony. Obviously, the Zerglings saw the Marines and swarmed up swiftly. The center, retreat. The flanks, surround them. At Mr. Fang's dizzying operations, the Marines in the center retreated while firing, and the Marines from the two sides surrounded the enemies. The number of Zerglings decreased quickly. When the last Zergling rushed to the Marine in the center moved to one side at Mr. Fang's order. Meanwhile, the other Marines fired almost simultaneously. The Zergling missed its target and fell to the ground. Gunsmoke filled the battlefield. With smooth retreat and attacks, the Marines killed all the enemies without any casualties. We can command soldiers to battle in this game. The audience gazed at the big screen, realizing that they could not only play the main characters but the commanders as well. Although this explanation sounded strange, it was easier for them to understand since it was more in line with their concept of the world. This game feels interesting, Mu Qing said after some consideration. Lately, the shop had piqued their interest in spiritual artifacts, which included the unique combat style of using these strange-looking spiritual artifacts. But, Tang Yu said curiously, who does that super-powerful spiritual ship at the beginning of the game belong to? No one could blame him for dwelling on this thought since the huge light-blocking spiritual ship at the very beginning of the game was too impressive to ignore. That's a battleship of the Protoss. Mr. Fang returned to the interface where he could select the races and paused his cursor on the golden armor on the right. This race had a completely different appearance from humans. You can also call this the race of gods. Race of gods. Tang Yu and other young people were startled. Remembering the destructive force that the spiritual ship had shown, they were awestruck by this race. Zhongwu and other senior cultivators exchanged a look of surprise and wondered, so powerful? It's like the race of angels in Diablo, Mr. Fang explained, they are different from the gods of your understanding. Oh really? Many people nodded and realized what was happening, they were clear now after hearing that explanation. It still sounds powerful, Mu Qing clicked her tongue and pointed at the big screen. Can we command them too? Fang Qi pointed at the words the third episode on the screen and said, you can do it after finishing the first and the second episode. We can do that. Boss. I want to play it too. Zhang Xiaoyu was the first to enter the game. Ugh. Xiaoyu. Wait for me. Other girls also activated the game. I want to play it too. The big white deer also activated the game. This, Tang Yu and others exchanged a look. Let's go and try the game too. Sir, how come this gun looks so weird? Su Tianji sent him a message. Obviously, she had begun playing the game in the Zhuhua City shop and had passed the boot camp and officer training. In the second episode, Wasteland, main character Jim Raynor appeared, and the players could choose to play as a single unit. Besides, how come the armor is holding the gun instead of me? She controlled Raynor who wore thick armor, and the armor held a huge gun. The Marines in the original game looked as tiny as a thumbnail, but when converted to the real world, it was clear that the armor was one size bigger than a burly man, it was even bigger than the armor of paladins in Diablo. So strange. Tang Yu had already put on the combat armor. The humans are so weak that they need such things to give them power. He fired casually and saw flames shooting out from the muzzle. The air before him vibrated slightly, and then the ground shook with a huge and terrifying bullet hole in it. It was a horrifying sight. In the commander mode, they couldn't feel the power of these weapons through the screen. But now they had a clear view of it. The piercing power was horrifying. This gun is so powerful. Tang Yu gasped, knowing that these guns were not in the same category as those in the Matrix and Resident Evil. Upon closer observation, he even saw electric currents flowing inside. What gun is this? Soon, someone added Mr. Fang in the group chat, Mr. Fang's tour group. Sir, why are the guns in this game different from those we saw before? Li Haoran had led the marine squad and ran into a few zerglings, and he fired with the gun in his hand, piercing the shells of the zerglings with each shot. If not for the swiftness of these insects, he could have killed one with 2 or even 1 shot. Oh that! You can change to the commander mode and read the introduction, Mr. Fang said calmly. C-14 Impaler Gauss Rifle. Su Tianji turned the gun in her hands and studied it with interest. What's this thing? Is it very powerful? I feel like it's even more powerful than my new handguns with spiritual energy. Li Haoran said curiously, only the fully array engraved sniper rifle with new armor-piercing bullets could be compared to its power. The problem was that there were no engravings of array patterns on this gun. Gauss was the electromagnetic unit. Fang Qi remembered that this thing had been in its experimental phase on Earth before he traveled through space and time, and its energy was derived from electromagnetic coils. When strong electric currents passed through the coil, the magnetic force would shoot out the iron magnetic bullets, which were so powerful that they could turn a tank into a pile of waste metal. The most common Gauss weapons used magnetic needles which could be shot out noiselessly. In fact, they were more like sneak attack weapons in use instead of firearms. The Marines in StarCraft used even cheaper items, which was the traditional ammunitions accelerated by Gauss force. The supersonic bullets had such power that they could pierce tanks or the armor on the space battleships. Of course, it was fine to fire at tanks. It was better not to mess with space battleships with these guns if one treasured their life. The ordinary people needed combat suits to use these guns. The suits could also restock ammunition and help them aim. It was impossible to use the Gauss rifles without the combat suits. These things had reached the limit that the cultivators and artifact masters in this world could understand and potentially study. After all, this world was at a stage even more backward than the world that Mr. Fang had traveled from. There was no way that they could develop even better technology. It would be better for them to focus on the gameplay. Sir. Whenever a new game was released, many people would bring questions to the shop owner. Su Tianji and Gu Tingyun were among them. What's this multiplayer mode? I found that I can directly choose Protoss. Gu Tingyun was obviously very eager to play Protoss after seeing the super battleship. What does it mean by adding a computer bot? Mr. Fang answered casually, when no one plays with you, you can play with the computer. Then, he looked around. I'll choose Protoss then. Then, he looked again. Battle, with 3 Zerg. He added 3 Zerg bots. No. With the great power of Protoss, I can battle several Zerg. Having witnessed the great power of Protoss, he thought that he could handle quite a few Zerg. Then, he found that the maximum was 7. How come there's an upper limit? Reluctant, he clicked on the button, 1 vs 7. In the distance, one could see a vast wasteland and the dark blue sky with hues of red. The violent gusts swept up the dust on the ground like ocean waves, and few plants grew on the ground. Obviously, the climate and environment in this place weren't pleasant. This old man knew nothing about the situation. Luckily, a Protoss assistant explained to him the functions of things like the base and the probes. Hearing Zhong Wu's question, Gu Tingyun stroked his beard and said with a smile, I'm playing the Protoss. They are the existences that controls that spiritual ship you had just seen. You can actually command Protoss now. Hearing Zhong Wu's exclamation, many people looked toward them. Some people not sitting nearby even walked over to watch from behind. Soon, a large group of people gathered behind Gu Tingyun. Can we choose Protoss directly? Tang Yu looked at his character who was still patrolling with a rifle, wondering why someone could now command the Protoss. Senior, how did you do it? Yu Bai stared at the screen intently. I want to command the Protoss too. The big white deer jumped, but it was even shorter than Zhang Xiaoyu when it stood on all fours. I want to watch it too. Surrounded by the crowd, Gu Tingyu smiled and said, "This is the multiplayer mode, and you can choose Protoss at the beginning in this mode." "Can we choose Protoss like this?" the Beoping spiritual master said in surprise, "Commanding such a powerful race, you will be unrivaled, right?" Gu Tingyun said, "Of course. In the battle, I chose 7 Zerg as my enemies, I'm sure I can handle them." Zhongwu laughed and said, "Senior, you never make mistakes in calculations. I'm sure you will be invincible when commanding this race." Mr. Fang was also looking at the multiplayer mode. Instead of playing, he was reading the rules of this mode. Since it was a real-time strategy game, this mode was different from the campaign mode. The campaign mode was true to the original storyline and simulated the battles in the plot to a high degree. They could choose one battle and ignore the lengthy and tedious parts leading to it. However, in the multiplayer mode, one must build their base, mine, and develop their forces. The lengthy process would bore the players, so the multiplayer mode made some adjustments to make the game more enjoyable. For example, it adjusted the length of time to build infrastructure, the number of base units like SCVs required, and the length of time spent on extracting minerals. After all, if it took a long time to establish a prosperous base like real life, there would be no time to command the battle at all since the computer time would have run out for the day by then. Under the advice from the assistant, Gu Tingyun studied the buildings that he could put into construction. He built a gateway. Then, he trained some zealots. In the multiplayer mode, the commanding methods of different races were almost the same. Besides the verbal instructions, there were some small differences. For example, the Protossianic link could help the commander control a few soldiers in the battle, and the controlled soldiers had different combat power depending on the player's performances. The human commander could direct the battle from the distance and even control some machines in emergencies with commands without the driver's participation. The Zerg units could respond the fastest to the commands of the Zerg overmind among the races and could make subtle and swift adjustments in individual Zerg units. Looking at the sharp psi blades on their wrists and swift movements of the zealots and the Shinik spheres around them, the audience became envious. Zhongwu offered a plan after a moment of consideration. "With such powerful soldiers, I think you should move swiftly and give the enemies a heavy blow." "You're right." Gu Tingyun sent out all 3 zealots while continuing training probes and zealots. He sent the zealots to explore the map. It was a desert, but the terrain looked good. There was only one exit situated in the southeast end of this vast valley. The 3 zealots walked out while Gu Tingyun talked about the development plan with the others around him. "I think you can block this entrance," Tang Yu said. "Then, no one can enter your valley, right?" "Yes. Good idea." Gu Tingyun said with a nod, "We must move steadily. Even though I'm in the advantage, I can't be careless. Where are my zealots?" Staring at the commander screen in the base, he froze for a moment. "Where are the 3 zealots I just sent out?" Standing nearby, Mu Qing watched while sipping milk tea. She said casually, "Maybe they surrendered to the enemies." "How could they?" The audience had been watching Gu Tingyun build a photon cannon. How could 3 soldiers surrender to the enemies? Unlucky. Gu Tingyun shook his head. "This gateway is so unreliable." He glanced at the 4 zealots that had just come out of training. "This time, I'll train them myself." Then, he sent out the 4 zealots. Controlling one of the zealots himself, he waved the psi blades heroically and led the others out of the valley. "Come with me to hunt down the traitors." They followed the path that the previous 3 zealots had taken. "Look! What's that?" After walking a long distance in the wilderness, they saw that the ground before them was covered by a blanket of purple slime. Before they could react, groups of zerglings swarmed up. With a scream, one of the zealots was pierced by a thick spike from the ground before it could react. Meanwhile, several zerglings swarmed up like ocean waves. The zealots that Gu Tingyun controlled twitched twice and died. The screen turned pitch black again. The audience exchanged a look and remained silent. "Hurry up! Assistant!" Build some more photon cannons for me. About 10 minutes later, the audience saw a giant herd of Zerg units like an ocean wave had come to the outside of the valley where the base of the Protoss was situated. The hydralisks shot out their needles, filling the sky like black raindrops. Instantly, the foremost photon cannons exploded. Look over there. What's that? Groups of ugly monsters with wings and dragon heads quickly flew over the base like gusts of wind. Among the Zerg units, there was even a huge mammoth-like beast with long tusks that was several stories high. It lifted one foot and stomped a dragoon into pieces. The audience looked at each other and then at the sight in a daze. He had just gotten out of the base, but he was already buried by the ocean-like Zerg. How come I only got zealots and dragoons, but they already developed to this stage? His mind lingered at the moment when the base exploded. His old face turned dark. The Zerg looks powerful, a few men from the demon clan scratched their hairy heads and said. Humph! The Zerg are ugly and disgusting. Mu Qing said with a snort. Who would choose to play them? Junior sister Mu, you're right, Sun Yuan said, Senior Gu was only careless. After all, the Zerg are no match for the Protoss. This time, Gu Tingyun chose only 3 Zerg as his enemies and then got busy with building the gateway. About a dozen minutes later, a sea of Zerg swarmed up. So many of them again. The audience felt sick as their faces almost turned green. Gu Tingyun decreased the number of enemies to 1. 1 versus 1 battle. I don't believe it. 3 minutes later, waves of Zerglings swarmed into the Protoss base. Meanwhile, the few zealots in Gu Tingyun's base watched the waves of Zerglings in a daze. The audience fell silent. The Zerg are so powerful. Gu Tingyun quickly changed his race to play Zerg. Many people returned to their seats and chose to play Zerg as well. Then, their 6 Zerglings were killed by 3 zealots, and a team of Zerglings was killed by 6 zealots. After being killed many times, they finally discovered the truth. None of the races was stronger than the other, it was possibly because they couldn't defeat the computer. After being tortured by the computer for a while, someone finally complained to the shop owner. Pointing at his computer, Sun Yuan yelled, Sir! How come the computer is so powerful? Is it powerful? Mr. Fang looked nonplussed. Although the players couldn't set the degree of difficulty for the computer bots, it should only be a little more intelligent than the bots that he had played against before he traveled through space and time. It wasn't as dumb as before in some areas. For example, in the original version, when a player sent 2 base units like SCVs to lure the base units from the bots, the latter would all follow out like morons, which made the 1 vs 7 match a piece of cake. How can you say it's not difficult? Mu Qing seconded Sun Yuan while eating spicy sticks. She glanced at Mr. Fang's screen and saw that he was still playing the campaign mode. Why don't you try it? Mr. Fang said in disdain. Why should I? He continued with the campaign mode. Ugh! Is it possible that the boss doesn't know how to play this mode? Zhang Xiaoyu leaned over curiously. After all, the shop owner would have shown off his skills whenever he was given the opportunity. This wasn't his style. Impossible. I just don't want to lower myself to be on the same level as these people who couldn't even defeat bots, Mr. Fang said while staring at the screen. He discovered that when he played the campaign mode from the RPG angle, it felt like playing Resident Evil. Occasionally, the players were allowed to drive vultures or other battle vehicles and could even operate the wraiths and star cruisers from the first-person perspective. It was much more interesting compared to the campaign mode in the original version. More importantly, he would soon meet the Queen of Blades. Although the Queen of Blades was now still a human, Mr. Fang was still pleased that he could see her. What do you mean by lower yourself? The people who had complained about the difficulty of the game were not happy. Right. How could he say that? I'm sure he can't beat the computer either. He doesn't dare to try it. Mr. Fang, meanwhile, an old laughter came. I finally defeated them. Ugh! Look! Senior Gu has defeated the computer. So soon? Wang Xia looked over in surprise. Sure enough, a victory icon appeared on the screen. Of course. Gu Tingyun said with confidence, this game is good. You have to control all your resources carefully and have a clear understanding of your resources and troops. The most important thing is that you must multitask. Gu Tingyun shared his experience. In this battle, I directed the ground troop to guard the entrance to the valley with the defense arrays. On the other hand, I sent out small teams of soldiers to harass the enemies in transportation spiritual boats under my personal control, taking advantage of their lack of air control methods. Meanwhile, I developed my force at top speed. By working 3 lines at the same time, I took their base without a sweat. Excellent! Zhongwu praised gustily, Senior, that is an amazing strategy that you thought of yourself. The senior taught arrays in Heavenly Academy. He excels in making strategies. I heard that Senior Gu is one of the best chess players in the world, this strategy was easy for him. The shop owner is indeed good, but old people are more experienced in this field of making strategies. The people talked among themselves while nodding. At this moment, the players of the other 2 shops were mostly playing the campaign mode. Meanwhile, Mr. Fang was still calmly playing the campaign mode. I'm sure that the scummy shop owner doesn't know how to play multiplayer mode. After staying in the group chat for a long while, some people began to call him scummy shop owner as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't keep playing campaign mode all the time. After all, in the campaign mode, the players could use their own cultivation strength to their advantage. Look! Senior Gu destroyed the Protoss with Zerg. He's indeed a shrewd man. Sir. In fact, Mu Qing had been reluctant to accept Mr. Fang's title as the president of Heaven-Defying Online Games Guild. Even the little princess of Zhang family calls him boss, which means that us, Zhang Xiaoyu's good friends, are 1 level lower than him too. At this moment, she said gloatingly, didn't you say that you didn't want to lower yourself to play with people who couldn't defeat the computer? Now that Senior Gu has won against several computers, maybe it's time for you to show your hand. Little Qing. Yu Bai tugged at her clothes, feeling a headache since she knew that this girl was trying to make trouble again. Yet. Sir, it's time for you to try it, right? Others seconded her and shouted, obviously not believing that Mr. Fang, a young man, could be more experienced in leading troops and making strategies than the experienced old men. After all, this wasn't a game that one could win with small tricks, it was a battle of strategies. Helpless, Mr. Fang could only look at Gu Tingyun. At this moment, battling with the computers obviously couldn't satisfy Gu Tingyun. He stroked his beard and suggested, shall we, have a match? Not daring to be careless, Gu Tingyun chose the Protoss that he was the most familiar with. Let's see what race Mr. Fang will choose. After seeing Gu Tingyun choose the Protoss, the audience walked over and watched Mr. Fang. Mr. Fang's cursor hovered on the races in hesitation and then clicked on random. Hey! How come the shop owner chose random? He is too arrogant and underestimated his opponent. Zhou Mo said with a snort, does he think that he will defeat Master's Protoss army with a random race? After all, it was a match of commanding skills and strategies, not the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3. In the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3, one could defeat Chonglu with all kinds of items, but this game focused on strategies. This wasn't a strong area for young people. The shop owner didn't look old, and it wasn't easy for old cultivators to act young, one still could see their true age through their manners and ways of doing things. In his opinion, the ability to make good decisions and create proper strategies needed time to polish. Maybe the shop owner thinks that it doesn't matter which race he chooses since he is bad at this game anyway. Ha 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 ha. Mu Qing convulsed with laughter. He can't be so weak and lame. Zhang Xiaoyu leaned toward Mr. Fang. Boss, can you do it? I found the old academy principal has excellent commanding skills. Of course. Mr. Fang answered casually, "Don't worry. I can easily defeat 7 computers at the same time." "Humph. You're bluffing." Now, even Zhang Xiaoyu didn't believe him. "Even if the senior gave you private lessons, you can't boast like this." Meanwhile, the game started. It was a rocky wilderness in a medium-sized map. The moment that he entered the game, Gu Tingyun got busy developing his force. On Mr. Fang's side, standing behind Mr. Fang, some young guys exclaimed, "Protoss as well." They were surprised that random also give Mr. Fang Protoss. "It's not good for the opponent to know about your race, right?" Li Weia said from the side, "The random choice can confuse the opponent, but you guys just told everyone the result, eh?" Gu Tingyun looked back in displeasure and said, "Keep quiet, just like you are watching a chess match." However, Mr. Fang didn't show any intention to restart the game. He continued to make probes. Then, he sent out a probe to scout, which wasn't an unusual move. At this moment, most of the audience turned their attention to Gu Tingyun's operations. He built a gateway first. It seems that Senior Gu wants to test the water with an attack. It looks like it. Gu Tingyun had just trained one zealot when Mr. Fang's probe trotted in. It strolled past the zealot as if it were in its own base. Then, it ambled to one of Gu Tingyun's probes, which was working, and shot the latter with its particle beam. The tiny particle beam shot on the probe's energy shield, creating a streak of pale blue light. It didn't inflict much damage except consuming some energy of the shield, but its behavior was so arrogant. Is it here to be killed? Doesn't he know that his rival has trained a zealot? Provocation. This is blatant provocation. Gu Tingyun didn't say anything, but the young people behind him rolled up their sleeves indignantly, wishing that they could go up and kill the provocative probe. It was outrageous. Gu Tingyun was calm since he had trained 2 zealots by now. It was a piece of cake to kill a probe. However, when the 2 zealots started moving toward it, the probe turned and ran at top speed with a sway of its butt. It's good that it knows who's more powerful. Zhou Mo nodded and said, "It seems that this probe knows the great power of zealots." The moment he said it, Mr. Fang's probe turned back around and continued to fire at Gu Tingyun's probe. Damn it! The 2 zealots followed up again. This time, they didn't plan to let this unit of Mr. Fang go. They surrounded the probe from both sides. Mr. Fang's probe moved to the left for a while before turning a big circle and running out. It dashed out from the gap between the 2 zealots. It is about to get away again. By now, the gateway had trained another zealot. This zealot exerted force and dashed toward Fang Qi probe at a faster speed. With the new operations, the players had more accurate control of the Shinik power in the Protoss units if they could operate them in person. Mr. Fang's probe moved in a fancy and dashing fashion, swaying its butt. Ding! 2 psi blades struck on the tail wing of the probe. The light shield disappeared, which showed that the damage was high. Then, the audience watched as Mr. Fang dragged the injured probe away. Humph! What was the use of harassing with this probe? Sun Yuan said in disdain. It scrambled away after zealots showed their hands. If it is a distraction designed to pull the enemy away from their base, it isn't a good one. Wang Xie commented. Right. Zhongwu nodded and said, "Now, Senior Gu can send zealots to harass his opponent base." After all, the zealots were not like probes which had little damage. At this moment, someone glanced at Mr. Fang's base and saw no offensive buildings and not even a defense tower. Look at the shop owner's base. He hasn't even built the gateway yet. He was busy directing the probe to harass and forgot to build his base. Ha ha ha. Now that the zealots are going over, his base will be destroyed. Academy Master Gu's 4 zealots are going there. The shop owner is placing photon cannons. It's too late, no. Sun Yuan said contemptuously, he doesn't have any soldiers, what's the use of building cannons now? How can he fight? Ugh! Senior Gu's zealots are turning back. Gu Tingyun's zealots had covered half of the distance between the two bases when they suddenly turned back. Mr. Fang cancelled the building of the photon cannon. How come Senior Gu's base is on fire? Mu Qing exclaimed while pointing at the screen. They glanced up and almost spat blood on the screen. On the right top corner behind an inconspicuous hill, Mr. Fang's photon cannon appeared out of the blue and began firing at Gu Tingyun's probes and base. Some probes that came out of nowhere were still busying building more photon cannons. No one had noticed this place. The two newly trained zealots hurried up to help. Before they could get close, they felt a sense of dizziness when they saw another two photon cannons hiding behind the concealed location of the first one. Boom! Boom! One zealot was dead. Not only Gu Tingyun, but the players watching from behind felt as if they would spit out blood as well. Damn it! What kind of strategy is this? In fact, everyone fooled by this move would instantly doubt their own intelligence since this strategy looked so dumb. However, except for the super masters, there were so many people, new and old players, who fell for this trap that they could form a line around Earth. In terms of the game, players didn't find it easier to play when it was more real. In the original version, one could find out from the red marks on the map if there were enemies. But now they could only see the surrounding area from the mental images transferred among different individual Protoss units besides the bird view map of the area around the base and the camera surveillance on the buildings. On one hand, there wasn't the fog of war anymore, but on the other hand, vision didn't become more convenient. Mr. Fang's probe entered his rival's base not only to provoke but to distract the audience and the enemy's Protoss force. Meanwhile, he built photon cannons in the blind spot. When Gu Tingyun withdrew the force from the outside, Fang Qi had almost finished building the fourth photon cannon. The 4 photon cannons were planted near Gu Tingyun's base like a malignant tumor. If they were not destroyed, Gu Tingyun couldn't even send his probes to extract minerals. However, even if he sent out his force, they were lowest level Protoss units as their attack damage and defenses weren't upgraded. Regardless of how good Gu Tingyun's operations were, they were no match for the defense towers. Fang Qi killed all the zealots and lost only 1 photon cannon. While his photon cannons fired at Gu Tingyun's probes, Mr. Fang built another photon cannon right beside Gu Tingyun's base. The audience watching from behind all turned red with pent-up rage, they felt like dying and taking Mr. Fang along. Gu Tingyun took off his virtual reality headset and quitted the game. GG. If he were another person, he would have jumped up and hit Mr. Fang with a chair. Mr. Fang put down his virtual reality headset and turned his head, and he saw a group of people glaring at him with green eyes. They were indignant. How can he be so cunning? It wasn't a fair match. Not fair at all. Zhou Mo yelled in disapproval. It was a win by playing tricks, one must move steadily in a real war. How could you use such a trick at the beginning of the game? Right. If it were a real war, it would be suicidal to build nothing in your own base. If anything went wrong, you would have been defeated easily. Sun Yun said. The audience had noticed that Mr. Fang had no defense towers and no soldiers. With only probes, his base could be destroyed by a handful of enemies. How can anyone command a war like this? If the ancient families had done things this way, they would have been destroyed long ago. I think you should have another match. Mu Qing said while eating spicy sticks. I think so too. One more match. Many people seconded her opinion. Gu Tingyu said, shall we have another match? At everyone's urging, they started another match since it was in high demand. This time, Gu Tingyun kept an eye on Mr. Fang's tricks. He chose the map in which he had played the first 1vs7 game as Protoss. His base was in a valley with one opening, and he blocked the entrance with a photon cannon, so no one could enter under the monitoring of the defense tower. Mr. Fang's SCVs ventured to his opponent's gate and returned when he found that his opponent was building a photon cannon. After all, one must have the opportunity to use the rush strategy. If there were no opportunity, they must give it up as it would be meaningless since it wouldn't succeed. In this match, Mr. Fang used the standard moves and commands and exchanged several rounds of attacks with his opponent. Despite Mr. Fang's good skills, he didn't want to compete with a Grandmaster on micromanagement. After all, Grandmasters were fast learners, and these operations were not difficult for them. A Protoss commander could control a portion of the soldiers with the Shinik link personally, like controlling several doppelgangers. Mr. Fang's opponent wasn't an ordinary player but a super grand cultivator with extremely high cultivation strength. With great micromanagement, he could even control 3 zealots simultaneously to hack bullets with blades. These scenes were thrilling to look both in terms of visual effect and skills. The operations were almost impeccable. This time, the random option gave Mr. Fang the race of Terrans, which was a race that Gu Tingyun had not fought with before. Despite all that, Mr. Fang kept a steady pace with his moves. 20 minutes later, I told you that the shop owner is not good at this. Look at Senior Gu's base. Such a huge battleship. So many strange spiritual boats. Then, they looked at Mr. Fang's home base. There are so few spiritual ships in the shop owner's base. Academy Master Gu is on the offense. Gu Tingyun's screen was filled with all kinds of battleships, which showed a strong economy. In contrast, Mr. Fang still had a mixture of air and ground forces. If not mentioning the mix of forces, he had even launched a sneak attack when his opponent was out on the attack. In the end, he caused little damage to his opponent but lost all his soldiers. What was stranger? They were puzzled that Mr. Fang had even brought a dropship for transportation in his sneak attack. This ship exploded before it could drop any soldiers. I'm sure that the shop owner is going to lose. Seeing Gu Tingyun leading the huge army of battleships to attack his enemy, the audience chattered in excitement. Escorted by all kinds of flying spiritual artifacts, the golden battleships lined up like a wave of golden clouds, blocking out the sun. When a huge golden spiritual ship flew up slowly, and then the light surrounding it distorted. As if they were concealed by an intangible sky curtain, all the Protoss battleships turned invisible. The yellow sand swept across the desolate wasteland, and the golden arbiter flew across the sky like a swallow-shaped shadow when one looked up. Only on Gu Tingyun's screen could the audience see the massive number of battleships. The huge group of battleships attacked from one side of Fang Qi base. The interceptors flying out from the huge battleships swarmed up like locusts. In the blink of an eye, most of the buildings in Fang Qi's second base were destroyed, including the reinforcements. They swept toward the heart of the base with tremendous force. More importantly, they had been feeling so indignant watching the last match that they felt exhilarated to see that Mr. Fang was finally at a disadvantage. However, they saw a strange arrow-shaped spiritual artifact slowly raising from the second base. It shot up into the sky with a long tail of flames like a shooting star. In the next moment, Gu Tingyun, who was sitting in the command station, suddenly turned his head and looked out of the window. He saw an object landed with a long tail of flames. It landed right in the center of the buildings around the base. Next, the audience felt as if their eyes were going to pop out when they saw a huge mushroom-shaped cloud rising into the air with earth-shaking noises. Then, everything in sight, including the spiritual ships and buildings, was shattered into pieces by a horrifying force. A destructive blast instantly radiated out, and the shields outside the base were torn into pieces like paper. Then, the metal armor of the base melted and shattered into dust. The audience reached out their heads and watched the scene in terror. What's this? When they recovered their eyesights, which had been blinded by the dazzling light, they found that the heart of the base had become a ruin. Only a few buildings in the outer range remained standing. The audience felt like their minds turned blank at this scene. The thing came from the shop owner's base. They had clearly seen something fly out of his base. Destroy this base! The audience yelled, looking more impatient than Gu Tingyun. At this moment, in Mr. Fang's commander center, a strange ball slowly floated after some battlecruisers. Meanwhile, Mr. Fang's hands moved so swiftly that it looked like he was having a stroke. A violent shaking spread out from the Protoss battleships. Almost instantly, the EMP shockwave from the science vessel paralyzed most of the Chinook shields of the Protoss army. A strange ripple swept across the Protoss battleship's scanner sweep. All the invisible units were revealed. My goodness! Look at Mr. Fang's screen. People saw Mr. Fang directing the battlecruisers and the wraiths to cover others while he himself controlled 2 wraiths to fly into the core of the Protoss battleship fleet in an elegant arc while bullets shot around them. Boom! 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 In the smoke, the Protoss observer which could detect invisible units was found out and destroyed. When the damaged wraiths' aircrafts returned from battle, another 2 wraiths flew out and destroyed another observer together with the other aircraft. On the screen, Mr. Fang swiftly switched screens, drove the aircrafts, and issued orders all at the same time. Now the wraiths turned invisible, and the Protoss couldn't detect their whereabouts. Like ghosts, the wraiths attacked the carrier that no longer had the protection of energy shields. When the battlecruisers fired, the carriers tried to flee, but they suddenly were frozen in mid-air. They were locked by ghosts. Mr. Fang had moved them up without alerting his enemies. Pull over more troops. Steady. The Protoss base, which had been razed to the ground, was in reconstruction. It was lucky that the nuclear missile didn't have radiation. Otherwise, the whole base would have become a wasteland. At this moment, several Banshee aircraft flew into Gu Tingyun's base and directly fired at the Nexus even though it was still warping in. Gu Tingyun was livid with fury, and his face almost turned green. Can't you wait until I rebuild the base? In the second base, a row of dropships flew in, and then tanks formed a line while many Marines gathered. The Marines instantly started firing, the ends of their guns looking like a long dragon of flames. Meanwhile, tanks were moving in from the front. The Protoss's main force was forced to retreat, and the newly formed military force was instantly scattered by the Terran forces that were coming from all sides. The Protoss force couldn't put up a defense. Oh my goodness, the audience watching in the back gasped. It was obvious that the Protoss's military force was more powerful, but at Mr. Fang's command, the human units worked together seamlessly. The aircraft that he personally controlled pierced into the heart of the enemy like a sharp blade. The machines followed Mr. Fang's swift orders completely, moving at a dizzying fast speed without losing formation. They attacked the 3 Protoss bases from 6 directions, and the survivors of the Protoss main force fled back with more than half of its soldiers lost. Ah! Mu Qing yelled while pointing at the screen. How can the shop owner command so well? Doesn't everyone call him the scummy shop owner? The few girls looked incredulous. Zhou Mo gazed at the screen in a daze. It shouldn't have ended like this. Zhongwu craned his neck as if he wished to dig into the screen. With ashen faces, Sun Yuan and the others stared at Gu Tingyun's screen which was filled with flying spiritual artifacts and Terran troops that were raising everywhere. The Protoss had been in the advantage, but the tables were turned when the horrible mushroom-shaped cloud rose into the sky. What the heck was that? What was the thing that had instantly got rid of all the shields on the Protoss battleships? The war scenes were so magnificent and real in the virtual reality that the audience was awestruck even though they watched the scenes merely through the screen. Displeased, Mu Qing asked in the group chat in QQ, didn't you guys always say the shop owner is scum and trash? How come he's so powerful? The people in the group chat always called him scum and trash. She just couldn't believe what she had just seen. He had defeated Chonglu with dirty tricks, then how come he became so powerful all of a sudden? Nalan Mingxiu sent 3 question marks. The shop owner has always been powerful. Then, why do you call him scum and trash? Lu Ningyun replied, we say it to vent our frustration since we can't defeat him. Nalan Hongguo chimed in, wait, don't tell me that you guys went to mess with him. The cultivators in Yuanyang City read the messages in the group. Sun Yuan replied, Wang's yes and, Zhongwu added, Gu Tingyun exited the game and glared at the messages in the group chat. This is why you call him scummy shop owner and trash every day. Tang Yu followed up, damn it. Why are you only telling the truth after he tortured us like this? Pooh! Scummy shop owner! Mu Qing mumbled and turned back to her game. The others who had wanted to watch the shop owner's defeat looked embarrassed. They were not on the same level as Mr. Fang. Obviously, Mr. Fang had reached quite a high level in the understanding of different strategies and making the different units work in harmony while they were still at the stage of simply moving armies. He's really good. Zhongwu was amazed to find that the young shop owner had such a good understanding of strategies. Boss, how come you're also good at this game? Zhang Xiaoyu stared at his screen curiously with wide-open eyes. Boss, what were those things that you just used? They are indeed powerful. She had seen that there were many spiritual ships parked in Gu Tingyun's base after the carriers were sent out to attack. However, these ships were all destroyed by Mr. Fang's bomb, which also left a terrifying crater in the ground. That weapon was indeed powerful. Li Lanruo still looked fearful when she recalled the shocking sight of the mushroom cloud and the power which shattered everything in one instant. The humans look tiny and fragile, but their spiritual weapons are so powerful. I wonder how they make these spiritual artifacts. It was more than powerful. Its power went beyond their imagination. How could humans are so powerful? Hearing this question, everyone turned to look at him. Mr. Fang didn't know how to answer this question of how to make a nuclear missile. I'm just the owner of an internet cafe, how can I explain this to you? Let's enter the game to find the answer. Tang Yu said. In the other two shops, the customers were mostly playing the campaign mode. Right now, there were no group chats in QQ for StarCraft yet, but someone had created the StarCraft post bar. The new players of this game could open and browse the post bar when they took a break from fighting battles in the campaign mode. Not everyone would play the new games when they just came out. Most of the customers were still playing old games, only the customers who loved new things or followed the footprints of the shop owner tried StarCraft. However, with the increase of the players in the shops, there were many people playing StarCraft already. They included old players such as Su Tianji, Li Haoran, Duan Yu, who was the head artifact master who led the project of the Heavenly Mirror in the half-city shop, and the disciples of the Nanhua faction. Even Nalan Hongyu, a loyal player of Diablo and the Legend of the Sword and Fairy, had begun playing StarCraft since it was a product of Blizzard. At this moment, Nalan Hongyu had just finished a battle while controlling Raynor in campaign mode. He took a break and opened the post bar. Then, he was startled. There were thousands of replies to posts in the newly established StarCraft post bar. Where is StarCraft happening? Soon, he saw a post that was really popular in the post bar. He opened the post and saw that it was from a girl with ID Sprite. There were many screenshots in the post, including a picture showing the limitless universe with a huge black metal spaceship filling the screen. Above the ship was a dark red planet. The spaceship traveled silently in the void like an island, followed by many small strange-looking bats. Ning Bai was reading the many replies to her discussion post. Is this a screenshot of the game? It looks like the starry sky at the beginning of the game. Did you see that there's no land below the ship? The land is the red sphere above the spiritual ship. This land is a sphere. The cultivators in the Zhuhua City shop and the half-city shop had never ventured out of the deserted sea realm, and it was natural that they didn't know the shape of their land. Nalan Hongyu browsed the screenshots and saw that this battleship was flying toward the nearby red sphere. When it got closer, the land looked larger until it became a vast and broad continent. Then, he saw another reply, the people in the game, always talk about stars, could it be that they live on stars? Nalan Hongyu was deep in thought. Sir, do the people in StarCraft really live on stars? With a cup of milk tea in her hand, Ning Bai sent a message to Mr. Fang on QQ as if she had discovered a new continent. Stars twinkle, right? How come the stars they live on don't twinkle? Mr. Fang read this message and felt as if he was looking at an elementary schoolgirl in the world where he had lived before his journey to this world. How come you are so naive? The moment that he replied to the message, another person's icon jumped. Nalan Hongyu asked, Sir, the people in StarCraft actually live on stars. Nalan Mingxiu questioned, a screenshot of the universe, I feel like these people live on stars. But, do the stars really look like this? Mr. Fang was at a loss for words. He suddenly found that Ning Bai wasn't the only naive person, it seemed like all the people here were naive. They were as curious as children. Zhang Xiaoyu suddenly asked, Ugh! How come you're all talking about stars? And the people living on stars? Mu Qing replied, It's very magical. Living on stars, won't they fall down? Mr. Fang's face turned dark. This is magical? Mr. Fang said, Did it ever occur to you? He rephrased his words and said, Maybe, maybe, the land we are standing on is also a star. Have you never thought about it? How can it be? Sitting next to Mr. Fang, Zhang Xiaoyu mumbled to herself, Boss is trying to fool us again. Mr. Fang's words landed like a bomb and created giant waves, but soon many people expressed their disagreement. Yu Bai said, If we lived on a star, I would be a fairy, right? Ning Bai added, I wonder if they are really in the sky, but I do envy them. Su Tianji sent a message in the group chat in QQ while eating instant noodles, a screenshot of the starry sky, so beautiful. Mu Donglei, indeed beautiful. More beautiful than the view that I had seen when standing on the star observing tower. They had never seen the view of the whole world or the sight beyond the sky, which was probably why they couldn't imagine the view of their planet from space.